The day Clara Boone stopped being invisible was the day three men decided she didn't deserve to live. In Red Hollow, silence was a weapon sharper than any blade. For 23 years, Clara had survived by making herself small, swallowing insults, hiding bruises that weren't physical, accepting that in this frontier town, some people simply didn't matter. But when flames consumed the general store and rough hands dragged her toward the canyon's edge, the entire town gathered to watch. Not one person moved. Not one voice rose in protest. They had already decided her fate. Then a shadow detached itself from the mountains, and everything changed. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Clara's journey travels. The morning started the way most mornings did in Red Hollow, with Clara Boone trying to disappear. She kept her head down as she walked Main Street, her worn boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. The fabric of her dress pulled tight across her shoulders, another reminder that nothing in this town was made for someone like her. She'd let out the seams twice already. There wasn't much fabric left to work with. "Morning, Clara," Old Man Hutchins called from his porch, his voice carrying that particular tone, the one that sounded friendly but had edges underneath. "Morning, Mr. Hutchins." She didn't slow down, didn't make eye contact. That was the trick to surviving Red Hollow. Keep moving. Keep quiet, give them nothing to grab onto. The general store sat at the end of the street, its weathered sign creaking in the wind. Morgan's Mercantile, property of Silas Morgan, who'd hired Clara 3 years ago when nobody else would. Not out of kindness, she knew. Out of convenience. She worked for half what he'd pay anyone else, and she never complained when he shortchanged her on Fridays. The bell above the door chimed as she entered. The familiar smell of leather, tobacco, and dried herbs wrapped around her. Silas was already behind the counter, counting coins with his thick fingers. "You're late," he said without looking up. Clara glanced at the clock on the wall. 7:30. Her shift started at 8. "No, sir, Don't argue with me, girl. The floor needs sweeping, and those crates in back won't unload themselves." He finally looked at her, his eyes flat. "And for Christ's sake, try not to break anything today. I can't afford to keep replacing what you knock over." She'd knocked over exactly one jar in 3 years. It had been on a shelf she couldn't reach without a stool, placed there by Silas himself. But there was no point in saying that. "Yes, sir." The morning crawled by in its usual rhythm. Customers came and went. Most ignored her. Some stared with that particular mix of curiosity and disdain that Clara had learned to recognize before she could read. Mrs. Pemberton made a point of moving her skirts aside when Clara passed. The Hoskins boys snickered behind their hands, loud enough for her to hear, but quiet enough to pretend innocence. "My mama says you eat enough for 3 people, the younger one said. His brother elbowed him, grinning. Clara kept sweeping. The dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the windows. She counted them, focused on them. Anything to keep her face blank, her hands steady. "That's enough," Silas said, but his tone was bored, not stern. "You boys buying something or just wasting my time?" They left, laughing. The bell chimed their exit like punctuation on a joke Clara had heard 1,000 times. By noon, the heat had turned oppressive. Clara was in the back room, struggling with a crate of canned goods, when she heard the horses. Too many horses. Moving too fast. She straightened, wiping sweat from her forehead. Through the gap in the door, she could see Silas at the counter, his body gone rigid. The bell didn't chime. Someone had caught it. "We're closed," Silas said. His voice had changed, higher, tighter. "Doesn't look closed to me." The voice that answered was smooth, almost pleasant. That made it worse somehow. "Nice little shop you got here. Real nice." Clara's heart started hammering. She knew that tone. She'd heard it before, in the saloons late at night when the liquor ran hot and the men ran hotter. The tone that preceded breaking glass and broken bones. She pressed herself against the wall, making herself small. Old instinct. If they didn't see her, maybe they'd leave her alone. "Take what you want," Silas said. "The money's in the register. Just take it and go." "Oh, we'll take it." Footsteps, heavy boots on wooden floors. "But money's not all we came for. See, we heard Red Hollow's got itself a new marshal. Real eager type. Thinks he's going to clean up the territory." "I don't know anything about that." "Sure you don't." A pause. "You got anyone else working here?" Clara stopped breathing. "No, just me." "Funny. Saw someone through the window earlier. Big girl. Where is she?" Don't move, Clara told herself. Don't make a sound. She left, went home for lunch. That so? Another pause, then louder. Well, if she's gone, she won't mind us looking around, will she? The door to the back room slammed open. Clara jerked back, but there was nowhere to go. 3 men filled the doorway, dusty, armed, with eyes that swept over her like she was livestock. Well, well, the first one said. The smooth-voiced one. He was younger than the others, maybe 30, with a scar that cut through his left eyebrow. Looks like old Silas there is a liar. Please, Clara managed. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. I don't want any trouble. Nobody wants trouble, sweetheart. But here we are. He stepped closer. Clara could smell the whiskey on his breath, the trail dust on his clothes. What's your name? Clara. Clara, that's real pretty. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Now, Clara, we got a problem. Your marshal's been making noise about tracking us down, sending telegrams, calling in favors, making our lives difficult. So we figured we'd send him a message. Show him what happens when someone gets in our way. I don't know the marshal. I don't know anything about... Doesn't matter what you know. He reached out and Clara flinched. His hand stopped inches from her face. You're just going to help us make a point. From the front of the store, Silas shouted, Leave her alone. She's got nothing to do with this. One of the other men laughed. Looks like someone's got a soft spot. Shut him up, Scarborough said without turning around. There was a thud, a crash, then silence. Here's what's going to happen, Scarborough continued, his voice still pleasant, still smooth. You're going to come with us. We're going to ride out to the canyon, and when the marshal comes looking, and he will come looking because that's the kind of fool he is, he's going to find you. What's left of you, anyway. The words took a moment to penetrate. When they did, Clara's knees went weak. No, she whispered. Please, no. Afraid so. Nothing personal, just business. He grabbed her arm. His fingers dug in hard enough to bruise. Try to run. I'll shoot you right here. Understand? Clara nodded. What else could she do? They dragged her through the store. Silas was on the floor behind the counter, blood trickling from his temple. His eyes met hers, guilty, ashamed, but not surprised. He'd known that in a choice between himself and Clara Boone, he'd never be the one they took. Outside, the sun was blinding. Main Street had gone quiet. Too quiet. Doors were closed, windows shuttered, but Clara could feel them watching, the whole town, hiding in shadows, peeking through cracks, watching her be dragged toward the horses, watching and doing nothing. Get on, Scarborough ordered, shoving her toward a roan mare. Clara's hands shook as she gripped the saddle horn. She'd ridden before, years ago, when her father was still alive, and still pretended she might turn into something respectable. But that was a lifetime ago. Her body was different now, heavier, clumsier. She got her foot in the stirrup and hauled herself up. The horse shifted under her weight, and one of the men snickered. Easy there, big girl, don't break the poor animal. Heat flooded Clara's face. Even now, even facing death, the shame still found her. They rode out of town in a tight group, Clara surrounded by the 3 outlaws. Nobody stopped them. Nobody even came out to watch. Red Hollow had perfected the art of looking away. The canyon was an hour's ride north, a slash in the earth where the rocks turned red and the shadows ran deep. Clara had been there once as a child, back when her mother was alive and picnics were still possible. She remembered wildflowers and birdsong, sunshine on stone. Now it just looked like a grave. They stopped at the edge where the ground dropped away into nothing. Wind howled up from below, carrying the smell of sage and rain that would never come. This'll do, Scarborough said. He dismounted and pulled Clara down after her. Her legs nearly buckled when she hit the ground. Tie her up. The other 2 moved with practiced efficiency. Rough rope around her wrists, another length around her ankles. They worked in silence, faces blank. This wasn't their first time. Wouldn't be their last. Please, Clara said again. Hated herself for saying it, but the word came anyway. I never did anything to you. That's the thing about messages, Scarborough said. He was rolling a cigarette, fingers steady. Doesn't matter who delivers them. Just matters that they get delivered. He lit the cigarette, took a long drag. Your marshal will find you in a day or 2, maybe 3, depending on the vultures. He'll see what happens when someone tries to be a hero in our territory, and he'll back off. He won't, Clara said. She didn't know why she said it, didn't even know if it was true, but something in her refused to give this man the satisfaction of her silence. He won't back off because of me. Scarborough studied her through the smoke. Probably not, he agreed. You're right about that. A girl like you? Nobody's going to miss you much. He crouched down, bringing his face level with hers. But it'll still eat at him, knowing he could have prevented it. That's enough. He stood and nodded to the others. Let's go. Torch the store on the way back. Make it look random. They left her there. Clara watched them ride away, dust rising behind their horses like smoke. The sun was starting to sink toward the horizon, painting the canyon walls in shades of rust and blood. In a few hours, it would be dark, cold, and she would be alone. She tested the ropes. They didn't budge. Whoever had tied them knew their craft. The tears came then. Not dramatic, not sobbing, just quiet tears that slid down her face and dripped onto the red dirt. All those years of making herself small, of swallowing insults and accepting cruelty, and it hadn't mattered. In the end, she was still expendable, still the one they could throw away without consequence. Time passed. The shadows grew longer. Clara's arms ached from being pulled back. Her shoulders burned. She tried to work the ropes again, but her fingers were going numb. She thought about her mother, dead 6 years now. About her father, who disappeared into a bottle and never come back out. About Silas, bleeding on the floor of his own store. About a town full of people who'd watched her dragged away and hadn't said a word. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermals. Clara watched it, envying its freedom. Then she heard something. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the rocks to her left. Her breath caught. Had they come back? Changed their minds about leaving her alive? A figure emerged from the shadows between the boulders. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of careful grace that spoke of long practice in staying quiet. Not one of the outlaws. Clara would have remembered someone this size. He stopped about 10 feet away, studying her with eyes that were hard to read in the failing light. Dark hair, long enough to touch his collar. A beard that looked like it had never met a razor. Clothes that were worn but clean, practical. And a face that Clara realized, with a start, she'd seen before. Everyone in Red Hollow had heard of Caleb Ridge, the mountain man, the recluse who lived somewhere up in the high country and came to town maybe twice a year for supplies. Stories swirled around him like snow, that he'd killed a man in Denver, that he'd survived a grizzly attack, that he talked to wolves, and they listened. Clara had seen him once, 3 years ago, buying rope and coffee from the store. He'd moved through the aisles like a shadow, barely making a sound. She'd been restocking shelves and had knocked over a bag of flour trying to get out of his way. He'd caught it before it hit the ground and handed it back to her without a word. His eyes had been kind. She'd never forgotten that. "Clara Boone," he said now. His voice was rough from disuse, but surprisingly gentle. "Thought that was you. You know me?" The words came out cracked and desperate. "Seen you around." He moved closer, his movement still careful, like he was approaching a spooked animal. "Gonna cut you loose. Don't run. You'll hurt yourself." He produced a knife from his belt, a wicked-looking thing with a worn handle. Clara tensed, but he just knelt beside her and started sawing at the ropes. "Who did this?" he asked. "I don't know their names. 3 men. They said they wanted to send a message to the marshal." The rope around her wrists fell away. Clara gasped as blood rushed back into her hands. The sensation was agonizing and wonderful at the same time. Caleb moved to her ankles. "Marshall's dead," he said matter-of-factly. "Got shot yesterday trying to arrest a card cheat. These 3 probably didn't know yet." Clara's stomach dropped. "So they did this for nothing?" "Seems like." The ankle ropes fell away. Caleb stood and offered her a hand. Clara stared at it for a moment, calloused, scarred, completely steady, then took it. He pulled her up with no apparent effort, catching her when she swayed. "Easy. Circulation's going to be off for a bit." "They're burning down the store," Clara said suddenly. "They said they were going to burn down Morgan's. Silas is in there. Already handled." "What?" "Saw the smoke on my way to town. Put it out. Silas is banged up but alive. So's the store mostly." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "Saw them ride out with you too. Took me a while to track where they were headed." Clara looked at him, really looked at him. He'd come after her. A man she'd spoken maybe 10 words to in 3 years had seen her being taken and had followed, had tracked her to the canyon, had saved her life. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Caleb tilted his head, studying her. Why what? Why come after me? Why risk it? You could have... Clara's throat tightened. Nobody in town did anything. They just watched. So why did you? He was quiet for a long moment. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of juniper and stone. Finally, he said, because it was wrong. 3 words, that was all. No grand speech about justice or mercy. Just a simple statement of fact. It was wrong, so he'd acted. Clara felt something crack open in her chest. Something that had been frozen for so long she'd forgotten it was there. They'll come back, she said. When they find out I'm not dead, they'll... No, they won't. Caleb's voice was flat, final. How can you be sure? He didn't answer directly, just said, come on, long walk back to town. What about a horse? Don't have one here. Was tracking on foot. He started walking, then paused when Clara didn't follow. You coming? She wanted to ask more questions. Wanted to know what he meant about the outlaws not coming back. Wanted to understand how he could be so calm when she was still shaking. But her legs were weak and her head was spinning, and all she could manage was to put one foot in front of the other. They walked in silence as the last of the daylight faded. Caleb set a steady pace. Not fast, but not slow either. He seemed to know exactly where he was going, even in the gathering dark. Once, when Clara stumbled on loose rock, he caught her elbow and steadied her without breaking stride. I'm sorry, Clara said automatically. For what? Being slow. She gestured at herself, a helpless movement that encompassed everything she hated about her body. Heavy. Caleb stopped, turned to face her. In the twilight, his expression was hard to read, but his voice was clear enough. You're hurt and you've been tied up for hours. Being slow is reasonable. And the rest of it? He shook his head. That's none of my business how you look. Not anybody's business but yours. Clara blinked. But no buts. You want to talk about what happened today? I'll listen. You want to walk in silence? That's fine too. But I'm not going to stand here and listen to you apologize for existing. He started walking again. Come on, town's another mile. They covered the distance in silence, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Clara turned his words over in her mind, examining them from different angles. Nobody had ever told her it was okay to just exist before, to not apologize, to take up space without shame. Red Hollow came into view as the moon rose, a scatter of lights against the darkness. Clara could make out the shapes of buildings, the main street running through the center like a spine. Smoke still drifted from the general store, but the building was standing. As they got closer, Clara could see people gathered outside. A crowd, waiting. Her steps slowed. What do I tell them? She asked. Caleb glanced at her. The truth. They won't believe me. They'll say I'm making it up, or that I did something to deserve it. Might. Probably will. He shrugged. Doesn't change what's true. They reached the edge of town. The crowd turned toward them, a sea of faces, familiar and foreign at once. Clara recognized Mrs. Pemberton, the Hoskins boys, Old Man Hutchins. Silas was there too, a bandage wrapped around his head. Clara. Silas pushed through the crowd. Thank heaven you're all right. We've been so worried. No, you haven't, Clara said. The words came out before she could think about them. You watched them take me. All of you watched, and nobody did anything. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. A few people looked away. Now, Clara, Mrs. Pemberton began, her voice dripping with false sweetness. That's not fair. We didn't know what those men would do if we interfered. We could have been hurt. I was going to be killed, Clara said flatly. They told me so. Said they were going to leave me in the canyon as a message. She looked around at all those familiar faces. Where were you going to be when they found my body? Silence. That's enough, Silas said, but his voice lacked conviction. You've been through a terrible ordeal. You should go home and rest. She's not wrong, though. Caleb spoke for the first time since they'd entered the town. His voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. I watched you all from the ridge, saw them drag her out, saw every one of you hide behind closed doors and shuttered windows. He paused. Cowards, all of you. Now see here. Old Man Hutchins started forward, but something in Caleb's stance stopped him. You don't live here, Ridge. You don't know how things work. Know enough. Know that when someone needs help, you help them, or you live with being the kind of person who doesn't. Caleb turned to Clara. You got somewhere safe to stay tonight? Clara thought of the boarding house where she rented a room. Mrs. Brennan would have heard about today by now, would probably have questions, opinions, judgment. I'll manage, she said. Caleb studied her for a moment, then nodded. I'll be at the hotel if you need anything. Room 4. He walked away, the crowd parting to let him through. Clara watched him go, this strange mountain man who'd done more for her in one afternoon than anyone in Red Hollow had done in 23 years. Well, Mrs. Pemberton said, her voice sharp with disapproval, I suppose we should all be grateful to Mr. Ridge for his intervention. Though I do wonder what kind of man spends his time tracking young women through the wilderness. The kind who saves their lives, Clara said. She was too tired for this, too wrung out to care about maintaining the careful politeness that had kept her safe all these years. I'm going home. She pushed through the crowd. Let them stare. Let them whisper. She was done apologizing for being alive. The boarding house was dark when she arrived. Mrs. Brennan appeared in the hallway as Clara climbed the stairs, her face pinched with concern that looked more like curiosity. My dear child, she said, what a terrible ordeal. Are you quite all right? Fine, Mrs. Brennan, just tired. Of course. Though I must say, she lowered her voice conspiratorially, it does make one wonder what those men wanted with you specifically. I mean, there were other people in the store. Clara stopped on the landing, turned slowly. Are you asking what I did to deserve being kidnapped? Mrs. Brennan's eyes went wide. No, heavens, no. I'm just saying, well, one must be careful, especially unmarried women of a certain, that is to say, she trailed off, apparently realizing she'd walked into a trap of her own making. Good night, Mrs. Brennan. Clara went to her room and locked the door behind her. The space was small, a bed, a washstand, a chair, a trunk for her clothes. Everything she owned in the world contained in less than 100 square feet. She sat on the bed and put her face in her hands. The tears didn't come this time. She was beyond tears, beyond fear even. What she felt instead was a strange, cold clarity, like standing on a high ridge and seeing the landscape spread out below, understanding for the first time how all the pieces connected. Red Hollow had never been her home. These people had never been her community. She'd spent years trying to earn their acceptance, their basic human decency, and it had been pointless. They'd already decided who she was, what she was worth, nothing. A knock at the door startled her. Clara? A man's voice, unfamiliar. It's Sheriff Pike. Need to ask you some questions about today. Clara stood, straightened her dress, and opened the door. The sheriff was young, maybe 30, with earnest eyes and a badge that still looked new. He held his hat in his hands. Miss Boone, I apologize for the lateness of the hour, but I need to get your statement while events are still fresh. Of course. He pulled out a small notebook. Can you describe the men who took you? Clara did, giving him every detail she could remember. Scarborough's voice, the other men's faces, what they'd said about the marshal, how they'd tied her up and left her to die. Sheriff Pike wrote it all down, his pencil scratching across the paper. And this Caleb Ridge found you how? I don't know. He just appeared, cut me loose, and brought me back. Convenient timing. Something in his tone made Clara look up. What does that mean? Just seems odd is all. Him being out there right when you needed help. The sheriff met her eyes. You sure you didn't know those men? Maybe have some arrangement. Are you suggesting I arranged my own kidnapping? Clara's voice came out sharper than she intended. I'm not suggesting anything, ma'am, just trying to understand how the pieces fit. The pieces fit like this. 3 outlaws wanted to send a message. They grabbed the person nobody would defend. The entire town watched it happen and did nothing, and the only man who cared enough to help was someone who barely knows me. Clara stood. Is there anything else, Sheriff? Pike studied her for a long moment. Those men. Ridge say what happened to them. No. Curious. Because I sent a deputy up to the canyon after we heard you were safe. He found 3 bodies, looked like they'd been ambushed, shot from above,
Real precise-like. Clara's stomach tightened. I don't know anything about that. Sure you don't. He closed his notebook. Well, Miss Boone, you've been through an ordeal. Get some rest. I'll be in touch if I have more questions. He left. Clara closed the door and leaned against it.
3 bodies. Caleb had said they wouldn't come back. She'd thought he meant they'd be scared off, but apparently he'd meant something more permanent. She should have felt horrified, shocked, something. Instead, all she felt was relief. Clara didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Scarborough's face, heard his voice, felt the rope cutting into her wrists. By dawn, she'd made a decision. She dressed in her most practical clothes and walked to the hotel. The lobby was empty except for a clerk who barely glanced at her. She climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor and knocked on room 4. Caleb opened the door. He looked like he'd slept in his clothes, which, knowing him, he probably had, but his eyes were alert. Clara, can I come in? He stepped aside without a word. The room was spare, a bed, a chair, a small table. A rifle leaned against the wall in the corner. Clara noticed it had been cleaned recently. Sheriff came to see me last night, she said. Figured he would. He found the bodies. Caleb nodded slowly. Expected that too. Did you kill them? Yes. No hesitation, no justification, just a simple fact. Clara sat down in the chair. Her legs felt unsteady. Why? Told you, they weren't going to come back. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. They hurt you, planned to kill you, burned Silas's store. Men like that don't stop until someone stops them. The sheriff thinks we were working together, that I knew them somehow. Pike's young, sees patterns that aren't there. Caleb shrugged. He'll figure it out eventually, or he won't. Doesn't change what happened. I should be upset, Clara said, that you killed 3 men, even if they were planning to kill me. I should feel something, but you don't. No. She looked up at him. Is that wrong? Does that make me a bad person? Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he moved to the window, looking out at the street below. My father used to beat my mother, he said. His voice was even, matter of fact. Every time he'd had too much whiskey, every time dinner wasn't right, every time she looked at him wrong. And she'd apologize. Try to be better. Quieter, smaller. He paused. One day, he hit her so hard she couldn't get up. I was 12. I took the fire poker and I hit him back, kept hitting until he stopped moving. Clara's breath caught. Sheriff called it self-defense. Maybe it was, but I kept hitting long after he was down, long after he was a threat. Caleb turned to face her. You asked if it makes you bad that you're not upset. I'll tell you what I learned that day. Sometimes the world's better off without certain people in it, and feeling relieved about that doesn't make you bad. Makes you human. What happened? After? Went to live with my uncle in the mountains, learned to hunt, to track, to be alone. He smiled, but there was no humor in it. Turned out I was good at it. Clara understood then. Caleb hadn't just happened upon her yesterday. He'd been in town when she was taken, had followed deliberately, had done what needed to be done. For her, a girl he barely knew. Thank you, she said. Don't need thanks. I'm giving it anyway. Clara stood. I should go. People will talk if I'm here too long. They'll talk regardless. True enough. She moved toward the door, then stopped. Caleb? What you said yesterday, about not apologizing for existing, did you mean it? He met her eyes. Every word. Clara nodded. Something was shifting inside her, something she couldn't name yet but could feel, like ice beginning to crack under spring sun. She left the hotel and walked back to the boarding house. Mrs. Brennan was in the kitchen preparing breakfast. The smell of bacon and coffee filled the hall. Clara, dear, I was just about to send someone to check on you. You look absolutely exhausted. I'm fine. Still, after yesterday's excitement, perhaps you should rest. Take the day off. I'm sure Mr. Morgan would understand. Clara thought about Silas, bleeding on the floor while she was dragged away, about how quickly he'd told them she'd left, how easily he'd lied to save himself. I'm going to work, she said. The store was a mess. Smoke damage blackened one wall. Broken glass littered the floor, but the structure had held.
Silas was there, sweeping debris, the bandage still wrapped around his head. He looked up when Clara entered. "You didn't have to come in today. Seemed like you needed help."
They worked in silence for a while. Clara swept while Silas assessed the damage to the stock. Finally, he said, "I'm sorry." Clara didn't stop sweeping. "For which part?" "All of it." He set down the ledger he'd been checking. "I should have fought them. Should have done something besides tell them you'd left." "You were scared. That's no excuse."
"Isn't it?" Clara looked at him. Really looked at him. Silas was 55, soft around the middle, with hands that had never held a gun. "They would have killed you. Probably would have killed us both." Ridge managed. "Ridge is different." "Maybe." Silas rubbed his face. "Still doesn't sit right with me."
"Then pay me what I'm worth," Clara said. The words surprised her as much as they seemed to surprise Silas. "Stop shortchanging me on Fridays. Stop paying me half of what a man would make. That's something you can actually do." Silas blinked. "Clara, I've been working here 3 years, never missed a day, never stolen so much as a penny. And every Friday, you count out my wages like you're doing me a favor." She set down the broom. "I'm good at this job, better than you give me credit for, so either pay me fairly or I'll find work elsewhere." It was a bluff. There was nowhere else. They both knew it. But something had changed in Clara overnight. Some fundamental shift in how she saw herself. The girl who'd left the store yesterday would never have spoken to her employer this way, would have swallowed the injustice and called herself grateful for any employment at all. That girl had died in the canyon. What walked back was something harder. Silas studied her, surprise giving way to something that might have been respect. "All right," he said finally. "Fair wages, starting Friday." "Thank you." They went back to work. By midday, word had spread that the store was open. Customers started trickling in, curious, concerned, looking for gossip more than goods. "Is it true what they're saying?" Mrs. Pemberton asked, fingering a bolt of cloth. "About Caleb Ridge?" "Depends what they're saying," Clara replied. "That he killed those men, shot them in cold blood. They were trying to kill me. Doesn't seem that cold to me." Mrs. Pemberton's lips pursed. "Well, I suppose. Still, it's rather violent. One wonders about a man who resorts to such methods. One wonders about a town that lets a woman be dragged away to her death and doesn't lift a finger to stop it," Clara said pleasantly. "Did you need that cloth, Mrs. Pemberton? Or were you just browsing?" The older woman's face flushed. The audacity." She dropped the cloth and swept toward the door. "I'll be taking my business elsewhere, thank you very much." Silas appeared from the back room as the door slammed. "You just ran off one of our best customers. She wasn't going to buy anything anyway." "True." He almost smiled. "But still, might want to dial back the directness." "Or," Clara said, "people could mind their own business." Over the next few days, a pattern emerged. People came to the store, ostensibly to shop but really to gather information. They asked about the kidnapping, about Caleb, about what Clara had seen. She answered in the most minimal terms possible and refused to be drawn into speculation. It drove them crazy. Clara discovered she enjoyed that. Enjoyed having something they wanted and not giving it to them. For years, she'd tried to make herself useful, necessary, worth keeping around. Now she was learning the power of withholding. Caleb stayed in town. Clara didn't know why. He'd gotten his supplies, done what he came to do, but he remained, a quiet presence that made certain people nervous. She saw him around sometimes, outside the hotel, walking the perimeter of town. Once she spotted him on the ridge above Red Hollow, just standing there watching. When she mentioned it to Silas, he said, "He's making sure nobody else comes sniffing around. Word travels fast in the territory. Those three had friends." "And Caleb's watching for them?" "Seems like." Clara didn't know how to feel about that, about having someone appointed himself her guardian without asking. It should have felt patronizing, smothering. Instead, it felt safe. On Friday, Silas counted out her wages, 50% more than usual. Clara stared at the coins. "That's fair?" she asked. "That's what I pay anyone else doing this job," Silas confirmed. Clara pocketed the money. It felt heavier than it should, not just because of the extra coins, but because of what they represented. Acknowledgement, respect. She was walking home when she saw the commotion. A crowd had gathered near the edge of town, raised voices. Clara quickened her pace. At the center of the crowd was a woman Clara didn't recognize, middle-aged, dusty from travel, with a bruise darkening her left cheek. She was arguing with Old Man Hutchins and several others. "Don't care what you think is proper," the woman was saying. "I need help. My husband's hurt, and there's no doctor for 50 miles. "There's a doctor in Ridgeway," Hutchins said. 2 days' ride. "He'll be dead in 2 days." The woman's voice cracked. "Please, someone, anyone." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Clara recognized the pattern. Everyone looking at everyone else, waiting for someone to step forward. Nobody willing to be first. "What happened to him?" Clara heard herself ask. The woman turned. "We were riding through the high pass. Horse threw him. He's bleeding inside, I think. Can't move without screaming." "Where is he?" "Our camp, mile east of here." "I'll go," Clara said. The crowd erupted. "You?" Mrs. Pemberton laughed. "What do you know about doctoring?" "More than nothing, which is what you're offering." Clara looked at the injured woman's wife. "I can't promise I'll help, but I'll try. That's more than anyone else here is willing to do." "Now, wait just a minute," Hutchins started, but the woman cut him off. "Thank you," she said to Clara. "Thank you." Clara went back to the store and gathered supplies. Clean cloth, whiskey for disinfecting, needle and thread. Silas watched her work. "You sure about this?" he asked. "No, but I'm going anyway." She found the camp without trouble. The man was in bad shape, pale, sweating, his breathing shallow. Clara examined him as best she could, her hand steadier than she expected. Broken ribs. At least 2. Maybe internal bleeding. She didn't have the skills to fix that, but she could clean the external wounds, bind his chest, make him more comfortable. She worked as the sun set, the woman holding a lantern. When Clara finished, the man's breathing had eased slightly. "That's all I can do," Clara said. "He needs a real doctor." "I know, but you've bought him time." The woman pressed coins into Clara's hand. "Please, take it." "I don't, please." Clara took the money. Not because she needed it, but because refusing would have insulted the woman's gratitude. She walked back to Red Hollow in the dark, picking her way carefully. When she arrived, Caleb was waiting near the boarding house. "Heard you went out to help someone," he said. "News travels fast." "Always does." He fell into step beside her. "That was good." "What you did?" "I didn't really do anything, just basic first aid." "You did what nobody else would. That's something." They walked in silence for a bit. Then Clara said, "Why are you still here? In town, I mean. You got what you came for." "Maybe I'm not finished yet." "With what?" He looked at her. "Making sure you're safe." "I can take care of myself." Starting to see that. There was something like approval in his voice. "But there's a difference between can and should have to. You shouldn't have to." Clara didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. They reached the boarding house. Caleb stopped at the gate. "I'll be around if you need me," he said. "Where are you going?" "Back to the mountains soon, but not yet." He touched the brim of his hat. "Good night, Clara." "Good night." She watched him disappear into the darkness, this strange man who'd appeared in her life like something out of a story she was still trying to understand. Inside, Mrs. Brennan was waiting. "Clara Boone, the whole town is talking about you gallivanting off into the wilderness with strange women. It's not proper. It's not safe. And it's certainly not—" "Mrs. Brennan," Clara interrupted. "I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Whatever you have to say can wait until morning." She climbed the stairs before the older woman could respond. Let her sputter. Let her disapprove. Clara was done apologizing. In her room, she counted the money the woman had given her. $5. More than she made in a week at the store. She tucked it into her trunk under her spare dress. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Clara Boone allowed herself to imagine a future that looked different from her past. Not better, necessarily. Not easier. Just different. And that somehow was enough. The change didn't happen all at once. Clara had expected some dramatic transformation, wake up one morning and suddenly be a different person. But that wasn't how it worked. Instead, it came in small moments, small choices. Like the morning Mrs. Pemberton came into the store and demanded Clara fetch something from the top shelf, snapping her fingers like Clara was a dog. And instead of hurrying to obey, Clara said, "I'm helping another customer right now. You'll need to wait." Mrs. Pemberton's face went purple. I will not be spoken to in such a manner by someone of your— Of my what? Clara set down the ledger she'd been updating and looked the woman straight in the eye. Go on, finish that sentence. The older woman's mouth opened and closed. Around them, the store had gone quiet. Other customers pretending not to watch while hanging on every word.
I simply meant, that is to say, Mrs. Pemberton gathered herself. I've been shopping here for 20 years. I deserve a certain level of respect. Respect goes both ways, Clara said. Now, are you going to wait your turn, or would you prefer to take your business elsewhere? Because I remember you saying something about that last week. Mrs. Pemberton left. The door didn't quite slam, but it was close. The customer Clara had actually been helping, a rancher named Tom Dawson, let out a low whistle. Well, that was something. Was it too much? Clara asked. Her heart was hammering, but she kept her voice level. Hell no! Someone should have talked to that woman like that years ago. He grinned. My wife's gonna love hearing about this. Word spread, like it always did. By evening, half the town knew Clara Boone had gotten uppity. The other half had their own interpretations, each more creative than the last. Clara discovered she didn't particularly care. Caleb stopped by the store 3 days after the incident with Mrs. Pemberton. He moved through the aisles with his usual quiet efficiency, gathering supplies. Coffee, flour, dried beans, salt, the practical provisions of someone who knew how to live rough. Clara watched him from behind the counter. He'd been in town nearly 2 weeks now, longer than anyone could remember him staying before. People were starting to talk about that too. Speculation about what kept the mountain man in Red Hollow ran from the mundane to the ridiculous. Clara had her own theories, but she kept them to herself. Heard you had some excitement, Caleb said when he brought his purchases to the counter. If you can call it that. Standing up to bullies usually counts as excitement. He pulled out his money. How much? Clara tallied the items. $4.30. He counted out exact change. Their fingers brushed as he handed it over, and Clara felt something electric run up her arm. She pulled back quickly, focusing on the register. You planning to stay in town much longer? She asked, trying to sound casual. Depends. On what? Caleb was quiet for a moment, then, on whether I'm needed. Clara looked up. He was watching her with those dark eyes that seemed to see too much. I told you I can take care of myself. I know. Doesn't mean you should have to do it alone. Why do you care? The question came out sharper than she intended. You barely know me. We've spoken maybe a dozen times in 3 years, so why— She gestured helplessly. Why any of this? Caleb picked up his supplies. You ever see something broken and just know you could fix it, even if it's not your job, not your responsibility? I'm not broken. Didn't say you were. I'm talking about the situation, the way this town treats you. He shifted the bag to his other arm. That's what's broken. And yeah, maybe it's not my place to fix it, but I'm here anyway. He left before Clara could respond. She stood there, hands flat on the counter, trying to make sense of what he'd said. And more importantly, what he hadn't said. Silas emerged from the back room. That man's interested in you. Clara's face went hot. Don't be ridiculous. I'm old, not blind. Way he looks at you. Silas shook his head. Just be careful. Ridge is a good man, far as I can tell, but he's also killed 3 people in the last 2 weeks. That's not nothing. He killed 3 people who were going to murder me and burn down your store. True enough. Still. Silas returned to his inventory. Just saying, be careful. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, turning Caleb's words over in her mind. The way this town treats you, as if it was something external, something that could be changed. But how did you change a town? How did you alter the fundamental way people saw you when their opinions had been set in stone for decades? The answer came to her around midnight. You didn't change them. You changed yourself. The next morning, Clara walked to the general store, taking a different route. Instead of the back streets where she usually traveled, the paths where fewer people would see her, she went straight down Main Street, head up, shoulders back. People stared. Let them. Morning, Clara, Old Man Hutchins called from his porch. Morning, she replied, didn't elaborate. Didn't apologize for existing.
just acknowledged and kept walking. At the store, a new challenge waited. The Hoskins boys had grown bolder in recent days. Without their mother around to rein them in, they'd taken to hanging around the store, making comments just loud enough for Clara to hear. Today they were outside when she arrived, sitting on the steps. "Well, well," the older one said. "Here comes the mountain man's woman." Clara stopped. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. Everyone knows Ridge is sweet on you. Question is, what'd you have to do to catch his attention?" The boy, 17, maybe 18, old enough to know better, grinned nastily. "Must have been something special." His brother snickered. Something cold settled in Clara's chest. The old Clara would have ignored them, hurried past with her head down. But the old Clara had died in the canyon. "Stand up," she said. "What?" "Stand up. If you're going to insult me, at least have the courage to do it on your feet instead of sitting on your ass like a coward." The older boy stood slowly, his grin fading. He was taller than Clara, but not by much, and something in her eyes made him uncertain. "Now," Clara said quietly, "you're going to apologize." "Like hell, but you're going to apologize, or I'm going to walk inside and tell Silas what you said. And Silas is going to tell your mother. And your mother is going to make the next month of your life very unpleasant." Clara crossed her arms. "Your choice." The boys exchanged glances. The younger one was already backing away, sensing the shift in power. "Sorry," the older one muttered. "Sorry for what?" His jaw tightened. "Sorry for saying that. And you won't do it again?" "No?" "Good." Clara stepped past them into the store. Her hands were shaking, but she didn't let them see. "Now get out of here, and tell your friends that the next person who wants to test me better bring more than crude jokes." Inside, Silas was waiting. "Heard that," he said. "Am I fired?" "Are you kidding? Those boys have been a nuisance for months. Their mother spoils them rotten." He actually smiled. "About time someone put them in their place." The confrontation spread through Red Hollow like wildfire. By noon, 3 different versions were circulating. By evening, Clara had supposedly threatened the boys with a knife, pushed one down the stairs, and called down divine retribution. The reality was far more mundane, but Clara didn't bother correcting anyone. Let them talk, let them embroider and exaggerate. The core truth remained. She'd stood up for herself, and the boys had backed down. 2 days later, something happened that changed everything. Clara was closing up the store when she heard shouting from down the street. She stepped outside to see a crowd gathering near the saloon. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the air, that electric tension that preceded violence. She should have gone home, should have minded her own business. Instead, she walked toward the commotion. At the center of the crowd was a woman Clara had never seen before. Young, maybe 20, with dark hair and a split lip that was bleeding freely. A man had her by the arm, shaking her. "I told you to stay put," he was saying. "Told you not to embarrass me." "I just wanted to get some air." He slapped her. The crack echoed off the buildings. The crowd shifted, but didn't intervene. Clara recognized the pattern. Domestic trouble. Not their business. "Look away." "Let her go," Clara heard herself say. The man turned. He was big, not tall but solid, with the kind of muscle that came from hard labor. His eyes were unfocused, drunk or close to it. "This ain't your concern," he said. "You're hitting a woman in the middle of the street. That makes it everyone's concern." "She's my wife. I'll discipline her how I see fit." The word discipline made Clara's stomach turn. She'd heard her father use that same word, that same tone, before the sound of fists on flesh. "That's not discipline," Clara said. "That's assault." The man's face darkened. "You got a big mouth for someone in your position." "What position is that?" "Fat, ugly, alone." He let go of his wife and took a step toward Clara. "You should be grateful any man bothers to notice you, much less defend you. But here you are, running your mouth about things you don't understand." The crowd was growing. Clara could see familiar faces. Mrs. Pemberton, the Hoskins boys, Tom Dawson, the rancher. None of them moving to help. All of them waiting to see what would happen. "I understand enough," Clara said. Her heart was racing, but she kept her voice steady. "I understand that you're a coward who hits women because it makes you feel strong. And I understand that if you take one more step toward me, you're going to regret it." He laughed. You threatening me? I'm giving you a choice. Walk away now or find out what happens when you don't. The man moved fast, faster than Clara expected. His hand shot out, grabbing for her throat. Clara reacted on instinct. She'd never been in a real fight before, but she'd spent years carrying heavy crates, hauling supplies, doing work that built muscle even if it didn't show the way people expected. She caught his wrist and twisted, using his own momentum against him. He stumbled, surprised. Then he got angry. His fist came around in a wide arc. Clara tried to dodge, but she was too slow. The blow caught her on the shoulder, spinning her around. Pain exploded down her arm. She went down hard. The street rose up to meet her, dust filling her mouth. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard the crowd murmuring, heard the man's heavy footsteps approaching, heard his wife crying. Then another sound cut through everything else. Boots, moving fast, and a voice that could have cut steel. Get away from her! Caleb. Clara pushed herself up on her elbows, tasting blood. Caleb stood between her and the man, and his face was absolutely calm. That was somehow more terrifying than anger would have been. This is none of your business, Ridge, the man said, but his voice had lost its confidence. You just made it my business. Caleb helped Clara to her feet without taking his eyes off the man. You all right? Yeah, Clara managed. Her shoulder throbbed, but nothing felt broken. Good. Caleb turned his full attention to the man. You got one chance to apologize to both these women and walk away. One chance. I ain't apologizing to... Caleb moved so fast Clara almost missed it. One moment he was standing still. The next, the man was on the ground, gasping for air, Caleb's boot on his chest. Let me be clear, Caleb said. You hit your wife again. I'll hear about it. You touch Clara again, I won't need to hear about it because you'll already be dead. You say one word, one single word against either of them, and I'll make the last 2 weeks of your life so miserable you'll beg me to finish it. He pressed down slightly. The man wheezed. We clear? Yes, clear. Caleb stepped back. The man scrambled to his feet and ran. Actually ran, stumbling over his own boots in his haste to get away. His wife stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. You got somewhere safe to go? Caleb asked her. She nodded. My sister. In Ridgeway. Good. I suggest you go there. Tonight, don't wait for him to come back apologizing. He pulled out some bills from his pocket. Stage leaves at dawn. That should cover your ticket. The woman took the money with shaking hands. Thank you. Both of you. Her voice broke. Thank you. She disappeared into the crowd. People parted to let her through, then slowly began dispersing. The show was over. Clara stood in the middle of the street, her shoulder aching, watching them go. Not one of them had helped. Not one. Come on, Caleb said gently. Let's get you looked at. I'm fine. You're bleeding. Clara touched her mouth. Her fingers came away red. She must have bit her lip when she fell. Caleb guided her to the hotel. In his room, he wet a cloth and handed it to her. Here. Clara pressed it to her lip. The cold water stung. You didn't have to do that. Which part? Any of it. I had it handled. Did you? He sat down across from her, his expression unreadable. Clara, that man outweighed you by 80 pounds. You got in one good move, and then he knocked you down. What exactly was your plan after that? I don't know, she admitted, but I couldn't just stand there and watch. I know, that's the problem. Caleb ran a hand through his hair. You got a good heart, but a good heart won't stop a fist. So what am I supposed to do, just let people get hurt? No, you're supposed to pick your battles. Figure out which ones you can win and which ones are going to get you killed. Clara set down the cloth. Is that what you do? Pick your battles? Yes. And today? That was a battle worth picking? Caleb met her eyes. Keeping you alive is always worth it. The words hung in the air between them. Clara's breath caught. She wanted to ask what he meant, wanted to push, but something in his expression stopped her. Your shoulder, he said, changing the subject. Let me see it. It's fine. Clara. She sighed and shifted her dress to expose her shoulder. Already a bruise was forming, dark purple, spreading across her skin like spilled ink. Caleb's jaw tightened. He hit you hard. I've had worse. That's not reassuring. He stood and retrieved a small tin from his pack. This'll help with the swelling. He opened the tin. Inside was a salve that smelled of pine and something sharper. Caleb scooped some onto his fingers. "May I?" he asked. Clara nodded. His touch was gentle as he applied the salve, his fingers working in small circles. Clara closed her eyes. When was the last time someone had touched her with tenderness instead of disgust? She couldn't remember. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me for basic decency." "Most people don't offer even that." Caleb's hand stilled. "I'm not most people." Clara opened her eyes. He was close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow. Close enough, too. A knock at the door broke the moment. "Ridge, you in there?" Sheriff Pike's voice. Caleb stood smoothly and opened the door. "Sheriff?" Pike's eyes went from Caleb to Clara, taking in the scene. "Miss Boone, heard there was an incident." "Nothing I couldn't handle," Clara said. "That's not what I heard. Heard you started a fight with Jack Morrison. I stopped him from beating his wife. He took exception to that. Multiple witnesses say you threatened him first." Clara laughed bitterly. "Of course they did." "Look, Miss Boone." Pike shifted uncomfortably. "I understand you're going through some kind of phase. Standing up for yourself, making changes, that's fine. But you can't go around starting fights." "She didn't start anything," Caleb said quietly. "Morrison did. She just refused to look away." "That's not how the witnesses tell it." "Then your witnesses are liars." Caleb's voice was still quiet, but something in it made Pike take a step back. "Clara stopped a man from abusing his wife. Then Morrison attacked her. I intervened. Those are the facts." "Multiple witnesses. Don't care how many people lie about what happened. Truth doesn't change based on consensus." Pike looked at Clara. "Is that your version too?" "It's not a version. It's what happened." The sheriff sighed. "All right, I'll make a note of it. But Miss Boone," he paused. "You're making enemies. Fast. Might want to think about whether that's wise." "Might want to think about whether doing the right thing should require wisdom," Clara replied. Pike left, shaking his head. Clara watched him go, something hard settling in her chest. "He's right, you know," she said. "I am making enemies. Good people usually do." "I'm not good. I'm just tired of being invisible." Caleb studied her. "You were never invisible, Clara. People saw you. They just didn't want to acknowledge what they saw." "What's the difference?" "Acknowledgement requires action. Easier to pretend not to see than to admit you're ignoring someone who needs help." He sat back down. "You're forcing them to acknowledge you now. That's why they're angry." Clara thought about that. About all the years she'd spent trying to be small, unobtrusive, easy to overlook, and how, despite all that effort, people had still seen her, still judged her, still found her lacking. "I don't want to be small anymore," she said. "Then don't be." "It's not that simple." "Isn't it?" Caleb leaned forward. "Every morning you make a choice. Be who they want you to be, or be who you actually are. You've been choosing yourself lately. Keep doing that. And if it gets me killed, then at least you die on your feet instead of your knees." It should have sounded callous. Instead, it sounded honest. Clara appreciated that more than she could say. Over the next week, things escalated. Mrs. Morrison, Jack's wife, left town, took the dawn stage to Ridgeway and never came back. When Jack realized she was gone, he went on a 3-day drunk that ended with him passed out in the livery stable. He blamed Clara. Others joined him. Clara had disrupted the natural order, made waves, gotten above herself. The criticisms came in whispers at first, then grew louder, bolder. Clara ignored them and kept working, kept standing tall, kept refusing to apologize for existing. Then the vandalism started. Someone threw a rock through her window at the boarding house. Mrs. Brennan demanded Clara pay for it. Clara refused. She hadn't thrown the rock, and moved out instead. Found a small room above the general store that Silas had been using for storage. "You sure about this?" Silas asked as Clara hauled her trunk upstairs. "More sure than I've been about anything." The room was small and dusty, but it was hers. No one to answer to. No more judgmental looks at breakfast. Clara cleaned it top to bottom, made up a simple bed, and for the first time in years felt like she had actual privacy. Caleb helped her move her things. He didn't ask why she was leaving the boarding house, didn't pry, just carried her trunk up the stairs like it weighed nothing and helped arrange her few possessions. "You need anything else?" he asked when they finished. "No, thank you." He nodded and turned to go. "Caleb?" Clara stopped him. "Why haven't you left yet? You've been here almost a month. That's longer than anyone remembers." He was quiet for a long moment, then, "Told you. I'm here until I'm not needed." "And when will that be?" "Don't know yet." He met her eyes. "But I'll know when the time comes." He left. Clara sat on her new bed and looked around her new space. It wasn't much, but it was hers. The next morning, she found her door had been smeared with something foul-smelling during the night. She cleaned it without comment and went to work. That afternoon, 3 women came into the store. Clara recognized them. All members of the church auxiliary, all wives of prominent men. They'd never spoken to her before beyond the bare minimum required for transactions. "Clara," the leader said. Her name was Judith Grant, and she had the kind of face that looked like it had never smiled. "We need to talk to you about your behavior." "My behavior?" "Your recent actions. They're causing problems in the community." Clara set down the broom she'd been using. "What actions specifically?" "Interfering in matters that don't concern you, encouraging women to abandon their husbands, associating with known killers." "You mean stopping a man from beating his wife and being friends with someone who saved my life?" "You're twisting things." "No, you are." Clara crossed her arms. "You're trying to make me responsible for other people's choices. Jack Morrison beat his wife. That's on him. She left. That's on him too. And Caleb Ridge killed 3 men who were planning to murder me. If that makes him a killer, fine. But it also makes him someone with more courage than anyone else in this town showed that day." Judith's face pinched. "We're trying to help you, Clara. Make you see that you're heading down a dangerous path." "Dangerous how?" "Men don't want women who cause trouble. You keep this up, you'll never find a husband. You'll end up alone." Clara laughed. Actually laughed, right in their faces. "I've been alone my whole life. The only difference now is I'm choosing it instead of having it forced on me." "You're being unreasonable." "I'm being honest. Now, are you ladies buying anything? Or are you just here to tell me how to live my life?" They left in a huff. Clara returned to sweeping, a smile tugging at her lips despite everything. That night, Caleb knocked on her door. "Heard you had visitors," he said when she opened it. "Word really does travel fast in this town." "Small place, not much else to do besides gossip." He held up a wrapped package. "Brought you something." Inside was a book, well worn, the pages soft with age. Clara opened it carefully. Poetry. Whitman. "I don't—" Her throat tightened. "You didn't have to—" "Figured you might like something to read. Gets quiet above a store at night." Clara looked at the book, then at Caleb. No one had given her a gift in years, not since her mother died. And certainly nothing as thoughtful as this. "Thank you," she managed. "You're welcome." He turned to go, then paused. "Clara, those women who came by, whatever they said, don't listen to them." "I won't." "Good." He smiled, one of his rare, real smiles that transformed his entire face. "You're doing fine. Better than fine. Don't let them convince you otherwise." After he left, Clara sat on her bed and opened the book. Someone, Caleb, probably, had marked certain passages. She read them in the lamplight, losing herself in the words. The next few days brought more of the same. Whispers, cold shoulders, a few more incidents of vandalism, but also something else. Small acts of support. Tom Dawson's wife came by with a pie. "Heard you stood up to Judith Grant," she said. "Someone should have done that years ago." A young woman Clara barely knew slipped her a note. "Thank you for helping Mrs. Morrison. My husband hits me too. Seeing her leave gave me hope." These moments were small, scattered, but they mattered. Clara was learning that change didn't come from grand gestures. It came from small acts of courage, repeated over and over until they became normal, until they became expected. She was also learning that standing up for herself meant standing up for others, that her fight wasn't just personal, it was bigger than that. One afternoon, she was restocking shelves when she overheard a conversation outside. 2 men, talking in low voices, getting out of hand. Someone needs to teach that girl a lesson. "Ridge won't like it." Ridge won't be around forever, and when he leaves, she'll be fair game.
Clara's blood went cold. She set down the cans she'd been holding and walked to the window. The men were gone, but their words lingered. Fair game. That night, she told Caleb what she'd heard. His face went very still.
You recognize their voices?
No, but they're planning something, waiting for you to leave. Then I won't leave. You can't stay here forever.
Why not?
Clara gestured helplessly.
Because this isn't your home. Because you have a life in the mountains. Because what?
Because I can't keep depending on you to save me, she thought. Because eventually I need to save myself. But what she said was, because it's not fair to you.
Caleb moved closer. In the lamplight, his eyes were almost black.
Let me worry about what's fair to me.
Caleb,
I'm not leaving until I know you're safe. End of discussion. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle herself. But the truth was, she was scared. Not of being hurt exactly, but of what it would take to truly protect herself in a place that had decided she was the problem. Okay, she said finally. But we need a plan, something more than you just standing guard.
Agreed.
Caleb thought for a moment. First thing, you need to learn to defend yourself properly. What you did with Morrison was good instinct, but instinct only goes so far. You want to teach me to fight? Want to teach you to survive. There's a difference. They started the next morning. Caleb took her out past the edge of town to a clearing where no one would see. He taught her basic holds, how to break a grip, where to strike to cause maximum damage with minimum effort.
You're not trying to win a fair fight, he explained. You're trying to get away. Eyes, throat, groin, those are your targets. Hit hard, hit fast, and run.
Clara practiced the movements over and over. Her body was clumsy at first, unused to this kind of precision. But Caleb was patient, correcting her stance, adjusting her form.
Better,
he said, after she successfully broke his hold for the third time. You're getting it.
I'm sweating like a horse, Clara said, wiping her forehead.
That means you're working. Sweat is good.
They practiced for an hour each morning.
Clara's muscles ached in new places. She discovered strength she hadn't known she possessed. Not the strength that came from carrying heavy crates, but a different kind. The strength of controlled violence, of knowing she could hurt someone if she needed to. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Word got around, of course. Everything did in Red Hollow. The town had opinions about Clara Boone learning to fight, about Caleb Ridge teaching her, about what it all meant. Clara stopped caring what they thought. She was done apologizing, done shrinking, done trying to make herself acceptable to people who had already decided she wasn't. And slowly, painfully, she began to understand something fundamental. She had never been the problem. The world that rejected her was. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Clara was closing the store when she heard glass shatter upstairs. She froze, one hand on the lock, listening. Heavy footsteps. More than one person. Moving through her room. Something hot and furious surged through her chest. She grabbed the iron poker from beside the stove. Silas kept it there for stoking the fire in winter, and climbed the stairs. Her hands weren't shaking. That surprised her. The door to her room stood open. 3 men inside, tearing through her things. One was going through her trunk. Another had pulled her mattress off the bed. The third was standing by the window, keeping watch. Clara recognized them. Dale Hutchins, Old Man Hutchins' son, Frank Porter, who worked at the livery, and Billy Nash, who'd been part of Jack Morrison's drinking circle.
"Get out,"
Clara said. They turned. Dale's face split into a grin.
"Well, look who's home. I said get out. Now hold on."
Dale held up his hands in mock surrender. "We're looking for something. Heard you've been keeping things that don't belong to you."
"The only things here are mine. You're thieves. Get out before I make you."
Frank laughed.
"You gonna make us? You and what army?"
Clara lifted the poker.
"Don't need an army."
The men exchanged glances. Billy, the youngest, looked uncertain, but Dale just smiled wider. "See, that's the problem with you, Clara. You got ideas above your station. Think because Ridge pets you like some kind of stray dog, you're special, but you're not. You're just—" Clara swung the poker. She didn't aim for Dale's head. That would have killed him, and she wasn't ready to cross that line yet. Instead, she went for his knee.
The iron connected with a satisfying crack. Dale went down screaming. Frank lunged at her. Clara spun, bringing the poker around. He caught it, and they struggled. He was stronger, but Clara had fury on her side. She drove her knee up into his groin, just like Caleb had taught her. Frank doubled over, and she shoved him backward into Billy. "You crazy bitch!" Dale was on the floor, clutching his leg. "You broke my knee!" "Good," Clara said. Her voice was steady, cold. "Next time, I'll aim higher. Now get out of my home." Billy helped Frank to his feet. They grabbed Dale under his arms and hauled him toward the door. Dale was still cursing, threatening, promising retribution. "Touch my things again," Clara called after them, "and you'll wish you'd only lost a knee." They stumbled down the stairs and out into the street. Clara stood in her doorway, poker still in hand, watching them go. Her heart was hammering now, the adrenaline catching up with her. But beneath the fear was something else, something fierce and clean. She'd defended herself, actually defended herself, and it had worked. Downstairs, the door burst open. Caleb took the stairs 3 at a time, knife already drawn. "Clara? I'm fine." She lowered the poker. 3 men broke in. I sent them away. Caleb looked at the destroyed room, then at Clara, then at the poker in her hand. His expression shifted through several emotions before settling on something like pride. "Did you hurt them?" "Broke Dale Hutchins's knee. Maybe Frank Porter's balls. Billy Nash got away clean." Clara set the poker down. Her hands started shaking. "They were going through my things, said I had something that didn't belong to me. I don't even know what that means." "Doesn't matter. They were looking for an excuse." Caleb sheathed his knife and started righting the furniture. "You did good, Clara. Real good." I was terrified. "Being scared doesn't mean you weren't brave." They cleaned up together in silence. Clara's few possessions were scattered everywhere. Her clothes trampled. Her mother's quilt torn. The book Caleb had given her was on the floor, pages crumpled. Clara picked it up carefully, smoothing the pages. "I'm sorry, they damaged it. Books meant to be read, not kept pristine. Damage means it's been lived with." Caleb took it from her gently and set it on the small table. "You should stay at the hotel tonight. This is my home. Your home just got broken into." And I defended it. "I'm not leaving." Clara met his eyes. "If I run now, they win. They'll know they can scare me out of any place I try to make my own." Caleb studied her for a long moment. "All right, then I'm staying here, on the floor, not negotiable." Clara wanted to argue, but the truth was, she didn't want to be alone. Okay. That night she lay in her bed, mattress back on the frame, quilt hastily mended, and listened to Caleb's breathing in the darkness. He'd made a pallet by the door, positioned so anyone trying to enter would have to go through him first. "Caleb?" she whispered. "Yeah?" "Why are they so angry? I haven't actually done anything to them. I just stopped letting them hurt me." He was quiet for a moment. "Some people need someone beneath them, makes them feel important. You refusing to stay beneath them, that threatens their whole view of the world." "That's stupid." "Yes, it is." Clara rolled onto her side. "Do you think it'll get worse?" "Probably." She appreciated his honesty. "What do I do?" "Keep doing what you're doing. Stand your ground. Don't apologize for existing." He paused. "And don't fight alone. I'm here. Silas is here. Tom Dawson and his wife. A few others who see what's happening. You're not as alone as they want you to think." Clara closed her eyes. For the first time since the break-in, she felt like she could breathe. The next morning, half the town knew about the incident. The story had already mutated into something unrecognizable. Clara had attacked 3 innocent men, used some kind of weapon, nearly killed Dale Hutchins in cold blood. Sheriff Pike showed up at the store before it even opened. "Miss Boone? Need to talk to you about last night." Clara let him in. Caleb was upstairs, giving them privacy. Or possibly listening from the top of the stairs. Clara wasn't sure which. "I defended myself against 3 men who broke into my room," Clara said before Pike could start. "They destroyed my property, went through my personal belongings. I asked them to leave. They refused. I made them leave." Pike pulled out his notebook. "Dale Hutchins says you assaulted him without provocation. Dale Hutchins is a liar. That may be, but he's also the son of one of Red Hollow's most respected citizens, and he's got a shattered kneecap. Good thing I didn't aim for his head then." Pike looked up sharply. "This isn't funny, Miss Boone." "I'm not laughing, Sheriff. 3 men broke into my home. That's a crime. I defended myself. That's my right. If Dale doesn't want broken bones, he shouldn't break into people's rooms. Multiple witnesses say they saw you threaten him afterward. I told him if he touched my things again, he'd regret it. That's not a threat. That's a promise. Clara crossed her arms. Are you actually going to arrest me for defending myself? Or are you just here to make me feel bad about it? Pike sighed and put away his notebook. I'm trying to keep the peace, and you're making that very difficult. The peace was already broken. I'm just the first person to point it out.
Clara. He rubbed his face. Look, I know things haven't been easy for you here. I know people can be cruel, but you're escalating things, making it worse. I'm making it visible, Clara corrected. The cruelty was always there. You just didn't have to see it before. Pike left without arresting her, but Clara knew it wasn't over. The town was watching, waiting, building towards something. The storm broke 3 days later. Clara was walking back from delivering an order to Tom Dawson's ranch when she saw the crowd. At least 30 people gathered in front of the general store, more arriving every minute. Her stomach dropped. She quickened her pace. As she got closer, she could see Silas on the porch, his face pale. Sheriff Pike was there too, trying to calm people down. And at the front of the crowd, Judith Grant and Dale Hutchins, leaning on crutches, his leg in a splint. There she is, someone shouted. The one who's been causing all the trouble. Clara pushed through the crowd. What's going on? Judith stepped forward, her face flushed with righteous anger. We've had enough, Clara Boone. Your behavior has become intolerable. My behavior? Assault, destruction of property, consorting with killers, encouraging good women to abandon their husbands. You've brought nothing but chaos to this community. Clara looked around at the faces, some angry, some uncertain, some just curious about the spectacle. I defended myself against men who broke into my room, Clara said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. I helped a woman escape a man who was beating her, and I made friends with someone who saved my life. If that's chaos, then this community needs more of it. You see? Judith turned to the crowd. No remorse, no shame. She thinks she's better than all of us. I don't think I'm better. I just think I deserve the same basic respect you give everyone else. Dale spoke up, his voice tight with pain. You broke my leg, you fat cow. The slur landed in the silence like a stone in still water. Clara felt the old shame try to rise, the old instinct to shrink and apologize. She pushed it down. You broke into my home, she said clearly. You went through my personal belongings. You destroyed my property. I asked you to leave. You didn't, so I made you, and I'd do it again. She's admitted it, Judith declared. Admitted to assault. It's not assault when someone breaks into your home, Caleb's voice cut through the noise. He'd appeared at the edge of the crowd, and people parted to let him through. It's self-defense. You, Judith rounded on him, you're the reason for all this. Filling her head with ideas, making her think she's something she's not. I'm making her think she's a human being who deserves dignity, Caleb said. If that's revolutionary to you, you're the problem, not her. The crowd murmured. Pike stepped forward, hands raised. Everyone calm down, this isn't helping. We want her gone, Dale said. Out of Red Hollow. She doesn't belong here. Who decides that? Clara asked. You? Based on what? That I won't let you treat me like dirt anymore? You're a disruption. I'm a person, Clara's voice rose. I'm a person who has lived in this town my entire life, who has worked hard, paid my bills, never bothered anyone. And the only thing that's changed is that I stopped apologizing for existing. You attacked my son, Old Man Hutchins pushed his way forward. You could have killed him. Your son broke into my room with 2 other men. What did you think I was going to do? Bake them cookies? Some people in the crowd laughed. Judith's face went purple. This is exactly what I'm talking about, she hissed. No respect, no decorum. You've become what? Say it. Clara stepped closer to Judith. I've become what? Judith's mouth worked, but nothing came out. Because there was no good answer. Nothing that wouldn't reveal the ugliness underneath all her propriety. I'll say it, a new voice spoke up. Jack Morrison pushed through the crowd, still looking rough from his drinking but upright. You've become uppity. Think you're too good for the likes of us. Well, you're not. You're just some fat girl nobody wanted, and now you got one man showing you attention and you think that makes you special. Clara felt something crack inside her chest. Not breaking, crystallizing, hardening into something sharp and clear. "You're right," she said. The crowd went quiet. Nobody wanted me. Not as a friend, not as a neighbor, not as a person deserving basic human kindness. You all made that very clear. For 23 years, you made that clear. She looked around at all of them. But you know what I learned? The problem was never me. It was you. All of you. You need someone to look down on, someone to mock, someone to abuse, because it makes you feel better about your own sad little lives. "How dare you?" Judith started. "No." Claire's voice cut like a whip. "How dare you? How dare all of you? You stood by and watched me get dragged away to die. Watched Mrs. Morrison get beaten. Watched every cruelty inflicted on anyone you decided was beneath you. And you did nothing, said nothing, because you're cowards, every single one of you." The silence was absolute. Even Pike looked stunned. "You want me gone?" Clara continued. "Fine, I'll leave. But not because you're telling me to. Because this place," she gestured at the town, at all of them, "isn't worth staying for. You're not worth it." She turned and walked toward the store. The crowd parted. Nobody tried to stop her. Upstairs, she began packing her trunk. She didn't have much. It didn't take long. Caleb appeared in the doorway. "You don't have to leave." "Yes, I do. If I stay, someone's going to get killed, probably me." Clara folded her mother's quilt. "And if it's not me, it'll be someone else. Someone in that crowd will work up the courage to do more than just break into my room. I can feel it. Then I'll handle it." "By killing them? How many, Caleb? How many people in that crowd would you kill to keep me safe?" She looked at him. "And what would that make you? What would that make me?" He didn't have an answer. "I need to go," Clara said quietly. "I've known it for a while, just didn't want to admit it." "Where will you go?" "I don't know yet. Away from here. Somewhere I can—" She stopped, searching for the words. "Somewhere I can breathe." Silas came upstairs looking 10 years older than he had that morning. "Clara, I'm sorry. I should have defended you down there. Should have— It's fine. It's not fine. It's—" He pulled out a small bag of coins. "Your wages, plus a little extra, for everything." Clara took it. "Thank you for giving me a job when nobody else would. You were the best employee I ever had. Just took me too long to see it." After Silas left, Clara finished packing. Caleb watched in silence. Finally, he said, "I'm coming with you." "What?" "You heard me. I'm coming with you, wherever you're going." "Caleb, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." He moved closer. "Clara, I came to town 6 weeks ago to buy supplies. Planned to be here 2 days. Then I saw you, really saw you, and something shifted. Watched you go from apologizing for existing to demanding the respect you deserve. Watched you get braver every single day. You think I'm going to let you walk out of here alone? After all that?" Clara's throat tightened. "I'm not your responsibility. No. You're my choice." He reached out, hesitated, then gently took her hand. "I'm choosing this. Choosing you. If you'll have me." Clara looked at their joined hands, his scarred and weathered, hers soft from store work. They shouldn't fit, but they did. "Okay," she whispered. They left at dawn the next morning. Clara had said her goodbyes the night before, to Silas, to Tom Dawson and his wife, to the few people who'd shown her kindness. The rest of the town could rot for all she cared. She'd expected to feel sad. Instead, she felt light, like she'd been carrying a weight for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. They were a mile out of town when they heard the horses. Clara turned in her saddle. 6 riders, coming fast. She recognized the shapes even at a distance. Dale Hutchins, somehow on a horse despite his injury. Jack Morrison, Frank Porter, Billy Nash, and 2 others she couldn't identify. "They're coming for us," she said. Caleb had already seen them. His hand went to the rifle strapped to his saddle. "Keep riding. Don't stop." "Caleb, I'll handle it. You keep going." "I'm not leaving you." "Clara, I said I'm not leaving you." She pulled her own horse to a stop. "We face this together or not at all." The riders caught up, circled them. Dale's face was twisted with pain and fury.
Thought you could just ride out of here after what you did?
I broke your knee because you broke into my home, Clara said. We're even. We're not even close to even. Dale nodded to the others. Boys, they dismounted. Caleb did the same, putting himself between Clara and the men. Last chance to ride away. Jack laughed. 6 against 1? I like those odds. I don't think you do.
What happened next was fast and brutal. The first man who reached for Clara got Caleb's fist in his throat. He went down choking. The second got a boot to the chest that sent him flying backward. But there were too many. They swarmed Caleb, dragging him down through sheer numbers. Clara didn't think. She grabbed the iron poker she'd strapped to her saddle, couldn't bring herself to leave it behind, and swung at the nearest man, connected with his shoulder. He yelped and stumbled back. "The bitch has a weapon!" someone shouted. Clara swung again. Hit Frank Porter in the ribs. He went down cursing, but then someone grabbed her from behind. Billy Nash, his arm around her throat. The poker fell from her hands. "Got her!" Billy yelled. Clara remembered Caleb's training. She drove her elbow back into Billy's stomach. Once, twice. He loosened his grip enough for her to drop and twist. Her hand found the poker. She came up swinging. The iron caught Billy across the face. Blood sprayed. He dropped. Clara stood there, breathing hard, poker raised. 3 men down. But Caleb was still struggling with the others, and Dale was pulling out a gun. "Enough!" Dale shouted. The fighting stopped. He pointed the gun at Caleb. "You move, Ridge, and I'll kill you. Simple as that." Caleb went still. Blood ran from a cut above his eye. Dale turned the gun on Clara. "You're going to pay for what you did, both of you. We're going to make sure you never forget." The gunshot echoed across the canyon, but it didn't come from Dale's gun. Dale looked down at his chest, confused. A red stain was spreading across his shirt. He touched it, then looked at his bloody fingers. "What?" He fell. The other men scattered, running for their horses. Within seconds, they were gone, leaving their wounded behind. Clara spun around. Sheriff Pike sat on his horse about 50 yards away, rifle still raised. "You two all right?" he called. Caleb helped Clara to her feet. "We're fine." "Dale?" Pike rode closer, dismounted, and checked the fallen man. "He's alive. Won't be for long if we don't get him to a doctor." He looked at Clara and Caleb. "Saw them ride out this morning. Figured they were up to no good, followed to make sure." "You shot one of your own townspeople," Clara said. "Shot a man who was about to commit murder." Pike's face was hard. "There's a difference." The ride back to Red Hollow was tense. Pike and Caleb got Dale onto a horse. The other wounded men limped along behind. Clara rode in silence, still processing what had happened. They'd almost died. Would have died, if Pike hadn't followed. The town was waiting when they arrived. Word had somehow spread already. People lined the streets, watching in silence as the procession passed. Pike took Dale to the doctor. The other men dispersed. Caleb and Clara stood in the middle of Main Street, surrounded by stares. Judith Grant pushed through the crowd. For once, she looked uncertain. "Is Dale?" "He'll live," Pike said. "But he and his friends just attempted murder. They'll be facing charges." "Murder?" "They were just trying to—" Judith stopped. "He's my nephew. I know. And he just tried to kill 2 people because his pride was hurt." Pike looked at the crowd. "This ends now, all of it. The harassment, the threats, the violence. Anyone who has a problem with Miss Boone or Mr. Ridge can take it up with me. And I promise you, I won't be as gentle as they've been." The crowd began to disperse, slowly, reluctantly. Clara watched them go. Then she turned to Pike. "Thank you for following them, for—" "Don't thank me yet. You still planning to leave?" Clara looked at Caleb. He gave a small nod. Her choice. "Yes," she said. "This town and I, we're done." "Can't say I blame you." Pike touched his hat. "Safe travels, Miss Boone. You're a braver person than most of us." That night, Clara and Caleb made camp in the foothills. Tomorrow they'd head into the mountains proper, but tonight they rested. Clara sat by the fire, watching the flames dance. Caleb was checking their supplies, making sure they had everything they needed. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know." Clara pulled her knees up to her chest. "I almost killed Billy Nash today. Hit him so hard there was blood, and I didn't feel bad about it. Doesn't that make me—"
Human, Caleb finished. Makes you human. He was trying to hurt you. You defended yourself. But I didn't have to hit him that hard.
Clara. Caleb sat down beside her. You spent your whole life being hurt and not fighting back. Today you fought back. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you someone who's learned their worth defending. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. He didn't pull away. What happens now? She asked. Now we head into the high country, find a place to settle, build something new. He paused. Together, if that's what you want. Clara thought about Red Hollow, about 23 years of cruelty disguised as propriety, about a town that had watched her suffer and called it normal. She thought about Caleb, who'd saved her life and then stayed to make sure she learned to save herself. Yes, she said, that's what I want. They sat together as the fire burned down to embers and the stars came out overhead. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new struggles. But tonight, for the first time in her life, Clara Boone felt free. And that was enough. The mountains swallowed them whole. 3 days into their journey, Clara understood why Caleb had chosen to live up here. The world below, with its judgment and cruelty, felt like something that had happened to someone else. Up here, there was only rock and sky and silence. Her body ached in new ways, riding all day, sleeping on hard ground, eating simple food cooked over an open fire. But it was good pain, honest pain. The kind that came from doing something real instead of enduring something terrible. How much further? She asked on the 4th morning as they packed up camp. Another day. Maybe 2. Caleb rolled up his bedding with practiced efficiency. Depends on the weather. There's snow coming. Clara looked at the sky. It was clear and blue, not a cloud in sight. How do you know? Smell it, feel it in my bones. He glanced at her. You'll learn. They rode higher. The air grew thinner, colder. Trees gave way to rocky outcroppings and patches of stubborn scrub. Clara's horse picked its way carefully over loose stone. She'd never been this high before, never seen the world spread out below like a map. It was terrifying and beautiful in equal measure. That afternoon, they crested a ridge and Caleb stopped. There, he said, pointing. Clara followed his gaze. Below them, nestled in a valley between 2 peaks, was a small cabin. Rough-hewn logs, a stone chimney, a stream running nearby. Beyond it, meadows that would probably be green in summer but were now brown and dormant. That's yours? Clara asked. Ours now, if you want it. Clara studied the cabin. It was small, isolated, miles from anyone. Everything Red Hollow wasn't. I want it, she said. They descended into the valley as the sun started to sink. By the time they reached the cabin, shadows were stretching long across the ground. Caleb dismounted and opened the door. The hinges creaked. Inside was sparse but clean. A bed in one corner. A small table and 2 chairs. Shelves along one wall. A fireplace built from river stone. One window facing east toward the sunrise. It's not much, Caleb said. Clara set down her pack, ran her hand along the table. Someone, Caleb, obviously, had built this with his own hands. Every piece fitted together with care. It's perfect, she said. That night they made a fire and ate a simple meal. Venison jerky. Hardtack. Water from the stream that tasted cleaner than anything Clara had ever drunk in Red Hollow. They didn't talk much. The silence up here was different than the silence in town. Down there, silence had weight, judgment hanging unspoken. Up here, it was just quiet, peaceful. Clara slept in the bed. Caleb made a pallet on the floor near the fire, just like he had in her room above the store. She wanted to tell him he didn't need to, that there was enough space, that she trusted him, but the words stuck in her throat. She woke to the smell of coffee and wood smoke. Outside the window, fat snowflakes were falling. Caleb had been right about the weather. Morning, he said when she emerged wrapped in her mother's quilt. Coffee's ready. Clara accepted the cup gratefully. The heat seeped into her cold hands. It's really coming down. Yeah, we'll be snowed in for a few days probably. Good thing we made it when we did. Being snowed in should have felt claustrophobic. Instead, Clara felt safe, like the weather itself was protecting them, giving them time to catch their breath. They spent the day organizing the cabin. Clara's few possessions found homes on the shelves. Caleb showed her where he kept supplies, flour, salt, beans, ammunition. How to work the damper on the stove to control the heat, where the best water was in the stream. You've thought of everything, Clara said. Had years to figure it out. Living alone, you learn fast what you need and what you don't. He paused. But some things are better with two people. Like what? Like having someone to talk to when the winters get long. Like knowing if you break your leg, someone will be there to help. He met her eyes. Like not being alone. Clara understood. Caleb had saved her, yes, but maybe she'd saved him too. From a solitude that had started as a choice but might have become a prison. The snow fell for 3 days. They settled into a rhythm. Caleb taught Clara how to maintain the cabin, how to patch the roof where it leaked, how to bank the fire so it lasted through the night, how to read the weather by watching the way the smoke rose from the chimney. Clara cooked meals from their simple stores, discovering she had a knack for making something good from very little. At night, they sat by the fire. Sometimes Caleb told stories about his years in the mountains. Sometimes Clara read aloud from the Whitman book. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence. On the 4th day, the snow stopped. The world outside was transformed, white and pristine and absolutely quiet. Caleb strapped on snowshoes and checked their surroundings, made sure the lean-to where they kept the horses was secure, chopped more wood. Clara watched him work from the window. He moved with an economy of motion that spoke of long practice, never wasted energy, never hurried, just steady, methodical progress. She was falling in love with him. The realization hit her like a physical thing. She'd been falling for weeks, probably. Maybe since the day he'd cut her free in the canyon. But up here, with no distractions, no town watching and judging, it was impossible to deny. The question was what to do about it. That night, after dinner, Clara made her decision. "Caleb," she said, "why did you really follow me that day? When they took me to the canyon?" He set down his coffee. "Told you, it was wrong. There are lots of wrong things in the world. You don't chase after all of them." "No, I don't." "So why me?" Caleb was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. Wind whistled around the corners of the cabin. "Because when I looked at you," he finally said, "I saw someone who'd been carrying weight they shouldn't have to carry. Someone strong enough to bear it, but shouldn't have needed to be that strong in the first place." He looked at her. "And I thought, if I could take even a little of that weight, maybe I should." "That's not everything," Clara said quietly. "No, it's not." He ran a hand through his hair. "You want honesty?" "Always. First time I saw you, 3 years ago, buying rope, you dropped something. Can't even remember what. And you apologized. To me. Like existing in the same space was an imposition." He shook his head. "That stayed with me. Kept thinking about it. About how wrong it was that someone felt they had to apologize for just being alive." Clara's throat tightened. "I don't apologize anymore. I know. That's..." He stopped. Started again. "Watching you change. Watching you get stronger, braver. Watching you stop shrinking yourself. Clara, that was like watching something beautiful happen. Like watching a plant grow towards sunlight. And I couldn't walk away from it. Couldn't walk away from you." The words hung between them. Clara stood up, crossed the small space. Caleb rose too, uncertain. She kissed him. It wasn't practiced or graceful. She'd never kissed anyone before. But Caleb's arms came around her, steady and sure. And suddenly, it didn't matter that she didn't know what she was doing. They figured it out together. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. "Wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "Why didn't you?" "Didn't want you to feel obligated. You'd been through enough. Last thing you needed was me putting pressure on you." Clara laughed shakily. "I've been terrified you only saw me as some kind of charity case. Never. Not once." He cupped her face in his hands. "You're the strongest person I've ever met, and the kindest, and the bravest. You're..." He stopped. "You're everything." They stayed up late that night talking, really talking, about their lives before, about their fears and hopes, about what they wanted to build together. "I don't want to just survive up here," Clara said. "I want to do something, build something that matters." "Like what?" She thought about Mrs. Morrison, fleeing her abusive husband, about the woman whose husband she'd helped after his accident, about all the people she'd seen suffer in Red Hollow while everyone else looked away. A place where people can come when they need help, when they're running from something, a refuge. Caleb considered this. That's dangerous. People running from things. Sometimes what's chasing them catches up. I know, but isn't it worth it? He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Yeah, it is. They spent the winter preparing. Caleb showed Clara how to hunt, how to track, how to survive in the wilderness. She was a quick learner, her body adapting to the physical demands. The soft edges she'd carried from Red Hollow, the parts of her that had been mocked and judged, became muscle and endurance. But she wasn't just learning to survive. She was learning to live. In the spring, their first visitor arrived. A young woman, maybe 18, with a black eye and a haunted look. She'd heard rumors of a place in the mountains where people who needed help could find it. Her name was Sarah. Her father wanted to marry her to a man twice her age in exchange for some land. She'd run. You can stay as long as you need, Clara told her. We'll keep you safe. Sarah stayed 3 weeks. In that time, Clara taught her basic survival skills. How to cook over an open fire. How to mend clothes. How to defend herself. When Sarah finally left, heading west to live with an aunt who'd offered her sanctuary, she hugged Clara tight. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me. After Sarah, others came. A man running from debts that would have put him in prison. A woman escaping a brothel. A family whose homestead had been burned by claim jumpers. The cabin couldn't hold them all, so Caleb built more structures. A bunkhouse, a larger kitchen, a barn. The refuge grew. Clara discovered she had a gift for this, for creating a space where people felt safe, where they could rest and heal and figure out their next steps. She didn't coddle them, made them work for their keep, taught them skills they'd need, but she also gave them something precious, dignity. A year passed, then 2. The refuge became known throughout the territory. Some people stayed only days, others stayed months. A few decided to settle permanently, building their own cabins in the valley. It wasn't perfect. There were conflicts, arguments, struggles. Running a community, even a small one, meant navigating human nature with all its complications. But Clara had learned in Red Hollow what happened when cruelty was allowed to flourish unchecked. Here, she made sure kindness was the default. Then, one afternoon in early summer, Caleb returned from a supply run with a troubled expression. What's wrong? Clara asked. Heard something in town. Might be nothing. He dismounted, started unloading supplies. Or might be a problem. Tell me. Some men from Red Hollow have been asking around. About you. About this place. Clara's stomach tightened. Who? Didn't get names, but the description matches Jack Morrison and Frank Porter. The names hit Clara like a fist. She'd thought about Red Hollow sometimes, couldn't help it, but had imagined it fading into irrelevance. The idea that it was reaching for her even now felt like a violation. What do they want? She asked. Don't know for sure, but asking questions about someone who left 2 years ago? Nothing good. That night, Clara and Caleb sat with the others who'd made the refuge permanent. There were 6 of them now, including Tom and Sarah, who'd both returned after finding the outside world wasn't ready for them. We need to be prepared, Caleb said. If they're coming, we need to know how to defend this place. Maybe they're not coming, Tom suggested. Maybe they're just curious. Maybe. But we don't bet people's safety on maybe. They made plans, set up watches, made sure everyone knew how to use a rifle, prepared escape routes if things went bad. The attack came 3 weeks later. It was dawn. Clara was checking on the horses when she heard it. Hoofbeats, coming fast from the southern trail. Too many horses, moving too quickly. Caleb, she shouted. He was already there, rifle in hand. Get everyone to the main house, now. Clara ran, rousing people from their beds. They drilled this. Everyone knew what to do. Within minutes, they were barricaded in the largest cabin, armed and waiting. Through the window, Clara watched the riders approach. 8 of them. She recognized Jack Morrison in the lead, his face twisted with something beyond anger. Obsession, maybe. Hatred that had festered for 2 years. Clara Boone, he shouted, we know you're in there. Clara stepped onto the porch, rifle cradled in her arms. Caleb tried to stop her, but she shook him off. I'm here. What do you want? Justice.
You ruined lives down in Red Hollow, broke up families, turned good women against their husbands. Someone needs to answer for that." "I didn't turn anyone against anyone," Clara called back. "I just showed them they had choices. You made my wife leave." "Your wife left because you beat her. That's on you, not me."
Jack's face purpled. "You're going to pay for what you did. You and everyone here who's helping you. We're not doing anything wrong. People come here because they need help. We give it to them. That's all." "That's not all. Jack seemed to search for words. "You're making people think they don't have to accept their place in the world, that they can just run away from their responsibilities." Clara almost laughed. After everything, this was still what it came down to. People accepting their place, staying small, staying controlled. "Everyone here chose to come," she said, "and they can choose to leave. That's called freedom." "That's called chaos." Jack pulled out a gun. "Now you're going to shut this place down, or we're going to do it for you." "No." The single word hung in the air. "What?" Jack looked genuinely confused. "No, we're not shutting down, we're not leaving, and you're not going to make us." Clara raised her rifle, not pointing it at anyone yet, just showing she had it. "You want to fight? We'll give you one, but understand, you came looking for trouble. What happens next is on you." Behind Jack, the other men shifted nervously. They'd probably expected intimidation to work, expected Clara to fold, to run. They didn't know her anymore, didn't know what she'd become. "Last chance," Jack said. "Leave peacefully, or we burn you out." "Then burn," Clara said. "We're not going anywhere." For a moment, nothing happened. The two groups stared at each other across 30 yards of open ground. Then one of Jack's men reached for something at his saddle. Caleb shot him. The man fell from his horse, screaming, clutching his leg. All hell broke loose. The men from Red Hollow scattered, taking cover behind rocks and trees. Return fire cracked through the air. Clara ducked back inside, her heart hammering. This was really happening. They were under attack. "Everyone stay down," Caleb shouted. He was at a window, returning fire with methodical precision. "Tom, watch the back. Sarah, reload for me." The fight was chaos. Clara had never been in a real battle before. The noise was overwhelming. Gunfire, shouting, horses screaming. She made herself focus. Stay calm. Do what needed to be done. She took position at a window and fired at anyone who tried to advance. Missed more than she hit, but the point was suppression. Keep them pinned down. Don't let them get close. An hour passed. Maybe more. Time became elastic, stretching and compressing. Someone threw something at the main cabin, a torch. It caught on the roof. Tom and another man scrambled to put it out while Caleb provided covering fire. Then suddenly, the shooting stopped. Clara peered out carefully. The men from Red Hollow were pulling back, dragging their wounded. She counted, one down permanently, two others hurt badly enough they couldn't ride. "They're leaving," Sarah said. "Maybe," Caleb said grimly. "Or maybe they're regrouping. Stay alert." But the riders kept going, disappearing down the southern trail. After 30 minutes with no sign of them, Caleb finally lowered his rifle. "I think we're clear, for now." They ventured outside carefully. The cabin had taken damage, bullet holes, a section of roof burned before they'd put out the fire. But nothing structural, nothing they couldn't repair. The man Caleb had shot first was still alive, barely. They brought him inside and Clara did what she could. Bandaged the leg wound, gave him water. He looked at her with hatred and confusion in equal measure. "Why?" he gasped. "Why are you helping me?" "Because that's what we do here," Clara said. "We help people, even people who came to hurt us." He didn't understand. Clara didn't expect him to. When he was stable enough to travel, they loaded him onto a horse and sent him south. "Tell them we defended ourselves," Clara said. "Tell them we'll do it again if we have to, but we're not looking for a fight." The man rode away without a word. That night, they gathered around a fire outside the damaged cabin. Everyone was exhausted, running on adrenaline and fear. But they were alive. They'd survived. "They'll come back," Tom said quietly. "Men like that don't give up." "I know," Clara said, "but we'll be ready." "For how long? How many times can we fight them off before He didn't finish the sentence. Clara looked around the circle, at the faces illuminated by firelight, people who'd come here broken and scared, who'd found strength they didn't know they had,
who'd built something worth defending. As many times as it takes, she said. This place matters. What we're doing here matters. And we don't give up just because it's hard.
What if someone gets killed? Sarah asked. What if next time, then we mourn them, we honor them, and we keep going?
Clara met each person's eyes in turn.
But we don't surrender. We don't go back to being small. We don't accept that the world has to be cruel, and we just have to live with it. Caleb reached over and took her hand. She's right. We've built something good here, something worth fighting for. One by one, the others nodded. They were scared. Clara could see it. But they were also determined. They'd tasted freedom. They weren't giving it up without a fight. The attack had consequences beyond the immediate violence. Word spread throughout the territory. Some people heard the story and decided the refuge was too dangerous. Others heard it and decided this was exactly the kind of place they needed, somewhere that wouldn't let them be pushed around. More people came. The community grew. They built walls around the main structures, set up proper defenses, trained everyone in basic combat. The refuge became a fortress, but it remained a refuge. Clara made sure of that. They still took in anyone who needed help, still taught skills, offered shelter, created a space where difference wasn't punished but protected. Months passed. The men from Red Hollow didn't return. Clara wondered sometimes if they'd given up or were just planning something bigger. She tried not to let it consume her thoughts. Then, one morning in late fall, a rider approached. Alone. Clara watched from the wall, rifle ready. The rider got close enough to identify. Sheriff Pike. "Hold your fire," she called down. "Let him through." Pike dismounted at the gate, looking older than Clara remembered. Tired. He removed his hat when he saw her. "Miss Boone? Or is it Mrs. Ridge now?" Clara and Caleb had gotten married the previous spring in a simple ceremony with the whole community present. No fancy dress. No elaborate ceremony. Just two people making a promise to each other. "It's Mrs. Ridge," Claire said. "What brings you all the way up here, Sheriff?" "Need to talk to you. About Red Hollow." He glanced around. "Hell of a place you've built." They brought him inside, gave him coffee. Pike sat at the table and rubbed his face. "Jack Morrison's dead," he said without preamble. "Died 2 weeks ago. Fell off his horse drunk. Broke his neck." Clara felt nothing. No satisfaction, no grief, just nothing. "I'm sorry," she said, because it seemed like the thing to say. "Don't be. He made his choices." Pike took a drink of coffee. But his death, it changed something in town. Made people think. Realized they'd wasted years on hatred that didn't get them anywhere. He looked at Clara. "There's been talk about what you're doing up here, about giving people second chances. And some folks, not all but some, are wondering if maybe you had the right idea, about treating people with dignity, about helping instead of judging." Clara sat back. This was the last thing she'd expected. "What are you asking, Sheriff?" "I'm not asking anything, just telling you, Red Hollow's changing, slowly, because you showed them there was another way to be." He stood. "Wanted you to know. Thought you'd earned that much." After Pike left, Clara stood on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains. Caleb came out and wrapped an arm around her. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know. I thought I'd feel, I don't know, something. Knowing Red Hollow might finally be changing. You feel nothing because they don't matter anymore. You've moved past them." Clara leaned into him. He was right. Red Hollow was her past. This, the refuge, the community, the life she'd built, was her present, her future. She'd spent 23 years trying to fit into a world that didn't want her. Then she'd spent 2 years building a better one. And she wasn't done yet. The years that followed were not easy, but they were honest. Clara learned that building something good didn't mean building something perfect. People arrived at the refuge carrying their own demons, their own damage. Sometimes they healed. Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they caused problems that required Clara to make hard choices, asking someone to leave, mediating conflicts that had no clear right answer, watching people she'd invested in choose to go back to the very situations they'd fled. Those failures hurt worse than anything Red Hollow had done to her, because this time she cared. This time it mattered. But the successes mattered too. Like the morning she watched Sarah, who'd arrived terrified and broken 5 years ago, teach a new arrival how to defend herself. Or the afternoon Tom brought in his first successful hunt alone, grinning like a kid. Or the evening she and Caleb sat on their porch watching the community they'd built gather for a shared meal, voices rising in laughter and conversation. The refuge had grown to 23 permanent residents, with a rotating population of temporary guests that kept the number closer to 40 at any given time. They'd built a school where Clara taught reading and writing, a workshop where Caleb taught carpentry and leatherwork, a greenhouse that extended their growing season, a meeting hall where they gathered to make decisions collectively. It wasn't utopia, but it was theirs. On a cold morning in early winter, 6 years after leaving Red Hollow, Clara woke to find Caleb already dressed and checking his rifle. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Riders coming. 3 of them." Saw the dust from the ridge. Clara's stomach tightened. It had been years since the attack, but the fear never quite left. "Same direction as last time?" "No, from the east." They assembled the others. Everyone knew the drill, but as the riders got closer, Caleb lowered his rifle. "I'll be damned," he said. "What?" "It's Silas." Clara moved to the wall and looked. Sure enough, Silas Morgan sat on one of the horses, looking uncomfortable in a saddle. With him were 2 women Clara didn't recognize. They opened the gate. Silas dismounted stiffly, looking around with undisguised amazement. "Clara, this is—" He seemed at a loss for words. "This is incredible." "What are you doing here, Silas?" "Brought you some people who need help." He gestured to the women. "This is Margaret and her daughter Emily. Margaret's husband died 6 months ago. Left her with debts she can't pay. Creditors want to take everything, including Emily." Margaret stepped forward. She was maybe 40, with work-worn hands and eyes that had seen too much hardship. Emily clung to her mother's skirt. Couldn't have been more than 8. "Please," Margaret said. "Silas told me about this place. Said you help people who have nowhere else to go." Clara looked at the little girl. She had Clara's eyes, that particular wariness of someone who'd learned early that the world could be cruel. "You can stay," Clara said. "Both of you, as long as you need." The relief on Margaret's face was almost painful to witness. "Thank you. I'll work. I'll do anything. Just please, we'll figure it out. Come on, let's get you settled." Later, after Margaret and Emily were situated in the bunkhouse and being shown around by Sarah, Clara and Silas sat in the main cabin. He accepted coffee gratefully. "Never thought I'd see you again," Clara said. "Figured you'd want it that way. After everything." Silas stared into his cup. "I should have done more. Back then. Should have stood up for you. You gave me a job when nobody else would. Paid me fairly, eventually. That was more than most did. Wasn't enough, though." He looked up. "I've thought about that a lot. About watching you get dragged away. About not doing anything. It's eaten at me, Clara. 6 years, and I still wake up some nights seeing your face when they took you." Clara didn't know what to say to that. She'd forgiven Silas long ago. What was the point of carrying that anger? But she couldn't absolve him either. He had to carry his own weight. "You brought Margaret and Emily," she said finally. "That counts for something. It's not just them. There are others. Red Hollow's changing, like Pike said, but change is slow and some folks are getting squeezed in the transition. I've been telling them about this place. Figured maybe you'd want to know." "Why would I want more people from Red Hollow coming here?" Silas smiled sadly. "Because you're better than we ever deserved, and because you understand what it's like to need help and have nowhere to get it." After Silas left the next morning, Clara found herself thinking about his words, about Red Hollow, about the people still trapped in that way of thinking, that way of being. She didn't owe them anything, had every right to turn away anyone from that town. But Silas was right. She did understand what it was like to be desperate, and turning away people who needed help because of where they came from would make her just like the people who'd turned away from her. Over the next year, more people arrived from Red Hollow. Some Clara remembered. Others were strangers. Each brought their own story of why they couldn't stay, why they needed something different. Not all of them worked out. Clara had to ask a few to leave when they brought Red Hollow's judgment with them, tried to recreate the same hierarchies and cruelties they'd supposedly fled. But most were genuinely seeking change, genuinely trying to be better. One spring afternoon, Clara was working in the garden when Emily, now 9 and growing like a weed, came running up. Clara, Clara, there's someone at the gate asking for you. Who? She says her name is Mrs. Morrison. Clara's hands stilled in the dirt. She stood slowly, brushing off her skirt. Tell her I'll be right there. Mrs. Morrison looked older. Her hair had gone gray at the temples, and lines framed her mouth, but her eyes were clearer than Clara remembered, less haunted. Mrs. Boone, Ridge, I mean, I'm sorry to just show up like this. It's fine. Do you need help? No, actually I came to say thank you. Mrs. Morrison twisted her hands together. I know it's been years, but I never got to properly thank you for standing up to Jack that day, for giving me the courage to leave. I didn't give you anything. You left on your own, because you showed me it was possible, that I didn't have to accept his abuse as normal. She took a breath. I'm living in Ridgeway now, with my sister, working as a seamstress. It's not much, but it's mine, and I'm safe, because of you. Clara felt something loosen in her chest. She'd often wondered what happened to Mrs. Morrison, whether leaving had been worth it, whether she'd found peace. I'm glad you're safe, Clara said. Truly. I heard about what you're doing here, building a place for people like me, like us. Mrs. Morrison reached into her bag. I made you something, as thanks. She pulled out a quilt. Beautiful workmanship, intricate stitching, done in blues and greens that made Clara think of mountain streams. I can't accept this, Clara said. It's too much. Please, I need you to have it. Need you to know that what you did mattered, still matters. Mrs. Morrison pressed the quilt into Clara's hands. You changed my life. Let me say thank you. Clara took the quilt, felt the weight of it, the hours of work stitched into every seam. Thank you, she whispered. After Mrs. Morrison left, Clara sat on the porch with the quilt in her lap. Caleb came out and settled beside her. You okay? He asked. I spent so many years thinking I didn't matter, that nothing I did made a difference. And now, she gestured helplessly at the quilt. People keep showing up to tell me I changed their lives. I don't know how to hold that. You hold it by keeping doing what you're doing, by being who you are. Caleb put an arm around her. You matter, Clara. You've always mattered. Just took the rest of the world a while to catch up. That summer, they held their first real gathering, invited everyone who'd passed through the refuge and made it to the other side. Wanted to celebrate not just survival, but thriving. People came from all over the territory. Clara barely recognized some of them. The scared, broken people who'd arrived at her gate transformed into confident, capable adults. They brought food, stories, children born since they'd left. The valley filled with music and laughter. Standing on a rise overlooking the celebration, Clara felt Caleb's hand find hers. Look at what you built, he said. We built, Clara corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Maybe, but this, he gestured at the crowd below. This came from you, from your heart. I just helped with the carpentry. Clara laughed. You did more than carpentry. I know. I also did the hunting. They stood together as the sun sank lower, painting the mountains in shades of gold and amber. Clara thought about the girl she'd been in Red Hollow, small and scared and convinced she deserved every cruelty inflicted on her. That girl was gone. In her place stood someone who'd learned the hardest lesson of all, that she'd never been the problem. The world that rejected her had been the problem, and when she'd finally stopped trying to fit into that world, she'd built a better one. The attack came without warning on a Tuesday morning in late fall, 7 years after Clara and Caleb had first arrived in the valley. Clara was teaching in the school, a dozen children ranging from 6 to 14, all focused on their slates, when she heard the first gunshot. She moved to the window and her blood went cold. At least 20 riders surrounded the refuge. But these weren't men from Red Hollow seeking revenge. These were professionals. Hired guns, moving with military precision. Everyone down! Clara shouted. Under the desks, now! She grabbed the rifle she kept in the schoolhouse, a lesson learned from the first attack, and moved to better see what was happening. More gunfire erupted from multiple directions. This wasn't a raid. It was a siege. Caleb appeared at the schoolhouse door, breathing hard. Blood ran from a cut on his temple. They've got us surrounded. Cut off the water access. This is coordinated. Who are they? Don't know, but someone paid good money for this. They got the children to the root cellar, the safest place in the refuge, built specifically for situations like this, then joined the other adults in defending the settlement. The attackers were good, better than Jack Morrison's vengeful mob. They used cover effectively, coordinated their movements, kept up constant pressure. And they weren't trying to burn the buildings or drive everyone out. They were trying to take the refuge intact, which meant they wanted something specific. The battle raged for hours. Clara's world narrowed to the mechanics of survival. Load, aim, fire, reload. Keep her head down. Don't think about how many attackers there were or how few defenders. Just focus on the next shot. Then, as suddenly as it started, the shooting stopped. "Clara Ridge," a voice called from outside the walls, cultured, Eastern accent. "I'd like to parley." Clara exchanged glances with Caleb. He shook his head. It could be a trap. But they were pinned down, running low on ammunition, and the children were terrified in the cellar. They needed to at least hear what the man wanted. She stood carefully, showing herself at the wall. "I'm listening." A man rode forward, older, maybe 50, wearing clothes too fine for frontier warfare. He looked completely out of place. "My name is Harrison Blackwell," he called. "I represent certain business interests in Denver. We've been watching your little community with great interest." "What do you want?" "To make you an offer. This valley, it sits on land that's about to become very valuable. Railroad's coming through next year. We want to buy you out. Fair price. Everyone leaves peacefully." Clara's jaw tightened. "We're not selling. I'm afraid that's not acceptable. We've already purchased the surrounding claims. This is the last piece we need." Blackwell smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Be reasonable, Mrs. Ridge. You're outnumbered and outgunned. We can do this the easy way or the hard way." "There's a third way," Clara said. "You leave. Now. And we forget this happened." Blackwell laughed. "You're in no position to negotiate. Neither are you." Clara raised her voice. "You see, while you were focused on us, my husband circled around behind your position. He's got a rifle pointed at your back right now. You might take this settlement, but you'll be dead before you enjoy it." It was a bluff. Caleb was right beside her, but Blackwell didn't know that. The man's smile faltered. "You're lying." "Am I? You want to bet your life on it?" A tense silence fell. Blackwell looked around nervously, suddenly aware of how exposed he was. His men shifted uneasily. "Besides," Clara continued, "you burn us out or kill us, and the story spreads about how Harrison Blackwell murdered women and children for a piece of land. How do you think that plays in Denver? Think your business partners will want to associate with you then?" Blackwell's face darkened. "You're making a mistake." "No. You made the mistake, coming here, thinking you could threaten us. We've survived worse than you." Clara leveled her rifle at him, not pointing directly, but close enough. "Last chance. Leave now, or find out just how hard we're willing to fight." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Blackwell pulled his horse around. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is. Because if you come back, I'll make sure every newspaper from here to San Francisco knows your name, knows what you tried to do. I've got friends now, people who owe me, and they'll make sure your reputation is destroyed." Clara let that sink in. "So you can leave with your life and your business intact, or you can push this and lose everything. Your choice." Blackwell stared at her for a long moment. Then he signaled his men. They withdrew, slowly, keeping their weapons ready, but they were leaving. Clara didn't lower her rifle until they were out of sight. Then her legs gave out. She sat down hard, shaking. Caleb was there immediately. "That was the biggest bluff I've ever seen." "Did it work?" "They're gone, aren't they?" "For now, but he was right. They'll come back. Or someone else will. This land is valuable. We can't hold it forever against people with that kind of money and power." That night, they gathered the entire community. Everyone needed to understand what they were facing. "We have a choice," Clara said. "We can stay and fight, keep defending this place against whoever comes next. Or we can take a different path." "What path?" Tom asked. "We're not selling to them." "No. But we could make the refuge official, file the proper claims, get legal ownership of this land, make it harder for people like Blackwell to just take it." "That means dealing with the government," someone pointed out. "Lawyers, bureaucracy." "I know, but it also means protection. We build this right, make it legitimate, and we're not just squatters anymore. We're landowners, citizens with rights. The discussion went long into the night. Some wanted to stay off the grid, keep the refuge informal. Others saw the wisdom in Claire's proposal. In the end, they voted. 23 residents, 23 votes. The motion passed 18-5. Over the next 2 years, Clara learned more about law and politics than she'd ever wanted to know. She traveled to Denver, her first time in a real city, and met with lawyers, filed paperwork, navigated the labyrinthine process of making the refuge legal. It was exhausting and frustrating, and nothing like the straightforward work of building cabins and teaching children. But it was necessary. She also made connections, found allies. There were more people like her than she'd realized, people who believed in giving second chances, in building communities that protected instead of punished. They helped navigate the legal maze, helped secure the land claims, helped establish the refuge as a recognized entity. The breakthrough came when a sympathetic judge, a woman who'd survived her own abusive marriage, fast-tracked their claims. Within 6 months, the refuge had legal title to 300 acres of Mountain Valley. Blackwell tried to challenge it, brought lawyers, filed injunctions, used every trick his money could buy. But Clara had learned to fight on this battlefield too. She gathered testimonies from everyone who'd passed through the refuge, got newspapers to run stories about the community they'd built, made enough noise that fighting them became more trouble than it was worth. Eventually, Blackwell gave up. The railroad found another route. The land stayed with the people who'd actually built something on it. On Clara's 30th birthday, 9 years after leaving Red Hollow, she stood on the porch of the main house and looked at what they'd accomplished. The valley held 40 permanent residents now. The school taught 23 children. They'd built a clinic, a library, a workshop that produced furniture sold as far away as Denver. But more than the physical structures, they'd built something intangible, a place where people could show up broken and leave whole, where difference wasn't punished but celebrated, where you didn't have to apologize for existing. Sarah approached, now a young woman of 25 with a confidence that would have seemed impossible when she'd first arrived. "Clara, there's someone at the gate. Says she knew you in Red Hollow." Clara's first instinct was wariness. Old habits died hard. But she followed Sarah to the gate. The woman waiting there was ancient. Or maybe not ancient, but worn down by hard living until she looked far older than her years. It took Clara a moment to recognize her. Mrs. Pemberton. The woman who'd moved her skirts aside rather than let Clara pass. Who'd led the charge to have Clara driven from Red Hollow. Who'd embodied everything cruel and small about that town. "Mrs. Pemberton," Clara said neutrally. "Mrs. Ridge." The older woman's voice was thin, reedy. May I speak with you?" Clara almost said no, almost sent her away. But curiosity won out. "All right." They sat in the garden, away from the main bustle of the community. Mrs. Pemberton looked around with something like wonder. "This is remarkable," she said, "what you've built here." "Thank you. I came to—" She stopped, started again. "I came to apologize. For how I treated you, for how I encouraged others to treat you. It was wrong. I was wrong." Clara had imagined this moment before, had scripted various responses ranging from gracious to scathing, but now that it was actually happening, she felt nothing, no vindication, no anger, just a vague sense of waste. "Why now?" she asked. "It's been 9 years." "Because I'm dying," Mrs. Pemberton said it flatly. "Cancer. Doctor gives me 6 months, and I've been thinking about my life, about the things I did. The people I hurt." She looked at Clara. "You were never the problem. I was. We all were. We needed someone beneath us to feel superior to, and you were convenient. That's all it was. Convenience and cruelty." "I know," Clara said. "Figured that out a long time ago. I don't expect forgiveness. Just wanted you to know, before I die, that I was wrong. That you were right to leave, right to build this place, right to show us all how wrong we were." Clara thought about forgiveness, about whether this woman deserved it, about whether granting it would somehow erase the years of pain. But forgiveness wasn't about Mrs. Pemberton. It was about Clara, about whether she wanted to carry this anger into the future she was building. "I forgive you," Clara said. Not because Mrs. Pemberton had earned it, but because Clara was done letting Red Hollow have any power over her. "I hope you find peace." Mrs. Pemberton wept. Clara let her, didn't comfort her. That would have been too much.
But she sat with her while she cried, bearing witness to regret that came too late to change anything, but maybe not too late to matter. After Mrs. Pemberton left, Caleb found Clara still sitting in the garden. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, just thinking about how much has changed, how much I've changed. You're exactly who you've always been. Just took the world a while to see it." Clara smiled. "You keep saying that." "Because it keeps being true." He sat beside her. "You know what I think about when I look at this place? About all these people you've helped?" "What?"
I think about that girl in Red Hollow, the one everyone ignored, the one they dragged to a canyon to die. I think about how she survived and built all this, how she turned her pain into purpose, how she refused to let cruelty define her. He took her hand. "You're the strongest person I've ever known, Clara, and I'm grateful every single day that you let me be part of this." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. "I couldn't have done it without you. Maybe, but you would have found a way. That's who you are." They sat together as the sun set, watching their community prepare for evening. Children playing, adults cooking dinner. The daily rhythm of life lived in safety and dignity. 10 years after leaving Red Hollow, Clara received word that the town had changed its name. They couldn't escape their past, so they decided to acknowledge it and move forward. The new name was Haven. It made Clara laugh. Haven. Like they'd been a safe place all along instead of the exact opposite. But she also understood. Change was hard. Admitting you'd been wrong was harder. The fact that they were trying, even clumsily, even far too late, meant something. More people came from Haven, some seeking refuge, others seeking to make amends. Clara welcomed them the same way she welcomed everyone, with cautious optimism and clear boundaries. The refuge, now officially named Ridge Valley Community, became known throughout the territory. People spoke of it with a kind of reverence, the place where anyone could find help, where judgment was left at the gate, where you could become who you were meant to be instead of who others decided you should be. Clara trained others to run the place so it wouldn't depend solely on her. Sarah became the lead teacher. Tom took over security and defense. Margaret, whose daughter Emily was now 15 and thriving, managed the administrative work. Caleb continued building, expanding, making the physical space match the growing community. On her 35th birthday, Clara stood in front of the community during their weekly gathering. 53 permanent residents now. Children everywhere. Gardens producing enough to feed everyone with surplus to sell. A blacksmith shop. A library with over 300 books. "I've been thinking about the future," Clara said. "About what happens when I'm gone. When Caleb's gone. We need to make sure this place survives us." She laid out her proposal. Establish Ridge Valley as a formal cooperative. Give every adult resident an equal voice in decisions. Create systems and structures that would outlive any individual. "This can't be about one person," Clara said, "or even two people. It has to be about the idea, about the belief that everyone deserves dignity, that communities should protect, not punish. That difference makes us stronger, not weaker." The motion passed unanimously. Years passed. Clara's hair went gray. Laugh lines deepened around her eyes. Her body, once a source of shame, became simply a body, a tool that let her do the work she loved. She stopped thinking about how she looked and focused on what she could do. She taught hundreds of children, helped hundreds of people find their footing, mediated conflicts, made hard decisions, built something that mattered. And somewhere along the way, she stopped being Clara Boone from Red Hollow, the girl nobody wanted, and became Clara Ridge of Ridge Valley, the woman who'd shown people another way to live. On a spring morning in her 53rd year, Clara woke to find wildflowers blooming across the valley, the same wildflowers she'd seen as a child, before Red Hollow taught her to see herself through others' eyes. She walked through the community greeting people, watched Emily, now a woman of 32 with children of her own, teach a class, saw Tom training a new group of arrivals in self-defense, found Caleb in the workshop, still building, still creating. He looked up when she entered, gray-haired now, face weathered, but his eyes still kind. "Morning," he said. "Morning." Clara moved into his arms. They fit together like they always had. "You know what I was thinking about?" "What?" "That day in the canyon, when you cut me free, when you said it was wrong what they did." She pulled back to look at him. "That was the day my life started, really started. Everything before that was just surviving. And everything after? Living. Actually living. They stood together in the workshop, surrounded by half-finished projects and the smell of wood shavings. Outside, their community, the one they'd built from nothing, hummed with activity. Clara thought about the girl she'd been, about all the years spent apologizing for existing, about the moment she'd finally understood the truth. She wasn't the problem. She'd never been the problem. The world that rejected her had been the problem. And when she'd finally stopped trying to fit into that world, when she'd stopped shrinking herself to make others comfortable, when she'd demanded the basic dignity she deserved, she hadn't just saved herself. She'd saved others too, because that was the thing about standing up, about refusing to accept cruelty as normal. It gave other people permission to stand up too. It showed them that change was possible, that they didn't have to live with injustice just because that's how things had always been. Ridge Valley wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. There were still conflicts, still problems, still days when Clara wondered if any of it mattered. But then she'd see someone like Emily, who'd arrived terrified and small, raising her own children to be brave and kind. Or she'd hear from someone who'd passed through years ago, writing to say they'd started their own community based on what they'd learned here. Or she'd simply watch the sun set over the mountains and know that this place, this idea, would outlive her. And she'd remember, she wasn't fighting for perfection. She was fighting for possibility, for the chance to build something better than what came before. Years from now, when Clara was gone and others ran Ridge Valley, they'd tell stories about her, some true, some embellished. The woman who'd survived Red Hollow, who'd built a refuge in the mountains, who'd shown people another way. But the stories would miss the most important part, would skip over the terror and doubt and countless small failures, would smooth out the rough edges until Clara became a legend instead of a person. So Clara made sure to write it down. The real story. The messy, complicated, fully human story. So that future generations would understand. Change didn't come from saints or heroes. It came from ordinary people who decided they'd had enough, who chose to stand up even when they were scared, who built something better because the world they'd been given wasn't good enough. She wrote about being dragged to the canyon, about learning to fight, about breaking Dale Hutchins' knee and not feeling sorry, about the refuge growing from one cabin to an entire community, about the battles, the victories, the failures. She wrote it all down so that no one could sand away the sharp edges and turn her story into something palatable, so that people would understand dignity wasn't given. It was taken, demanded, fought for. And most importantly, she wrote about the lesson that had taken her 23 years to learn. That when the world tells you you're not enough, when it tries to make you small and quiet and apologetic, the problem isn't you. The problem is the world. And you don't have to accept it. You can build a better one. On Clara's 60th birthday, the entire community gathered. Residents past and present, people who'd passed through and moved on, friends from across the territory. They came to celebrate not just Clara, but what she represented. Someone stood to give a speech, talked about Clara's courage, her vision, her strength. Clara listened, uncomfortable with the praise but understanding its purpose. These stories mattered. They gave people something to aspire to. But when it was her turn to speak, Clara kept it simple. I wasn't special, she said. I was just someone who got tired of being treated like I didn't matter. And when I finally stood up for myself, I discovered something. I'd never been the problem. The world that rejected me was the problem. She looked around at all the faces, young and old, different colors, different backgrounds, different stories. United by one thing, they'd all been rejected somewhere else. You're not the problem either, Clara said. None of you. You're here because someone somewhere decided you didn't fit, that you were too much or not enough or wrong somehow, but they were wrong. And this place, what we've built together, is proof. She raised her glass. To everyone who was told they didn't belong, to everyone who built their own belonging instead, to refusing to be small, to demanding dignity, to building something better. To building something better, the crowd echoed. That night, Clara and Caleb sat on their porch, watching the stars come out. 60 years old, and Clara finally felt at peace. Not because her life was perfect. It wasn't. Not because all problems were solved. They weren't. But because she'd done what she set out to do. She'd built something that mattered. She'd shown people another way. And when she was gone, that work would continue. No regrets? Caleb asked. Clara thought about it, about the years in Red Hollow, about the pain and fear and humiliation, about everything she'd endured. No, she said finally, because all of it, every terrible thing, led here, to this, to you, to all of them. She gestured at the light scattered across the valley. Would I change it if I could? Maybe. But then I might not have built this. And this matters more than my pain. You matter, Caleb said quietly. Not just what you built, you. I know. And she did. Finally, after all these years, she actually believed it. I matter. I've always mattered. Just took me a while to see it. They sat together as the night deepened. Somewhere in the valley, someone was playing music. Children's laughter drifted on the wind, the sounds of a community at peace. Clara Boone, Clara Ridge now, had started life as someone nobody wanted. She'd been mocked, judged, dragged to a canyon to die. She'd survived all of it. And in surviving, in refusing to accept the world's verdict on her worth, she'd built something extraordinary. Not a perfect place. Not a place without problems or struggles or failures, but a place where people could be human, where difference was protected instead of punished, where dignity wasn't a privilege but a right. She'd shown them all the truth. The world didn't get to decide who mattered. You decided. And when you decided you mattered, when you demanded the respect you deserved, when you stopped apologizing for existing, everything changed. The girl in the canyon had died. In her place stood a woman who'd learned the hardest, most important lesson of all. She was never the problem. The world that rejected her was. And when she finally stopped trying to fit into it, when she finally stopped making herself small, she didn't just save herself. She built a better world. And that world would outlive her, would continue long after she was gone, because she'd built it not on herself, but on an idea. The idea that everyone deserved dignity, deserved safety, deserved a chance to become who they really were. That was her legacy, not the buildings or the land or even the community itself, but the idea that you didn't have to accept cruelty, that you could demand better, that you could build better. And in the end, that was enough, more than enough. It was everything.